a certain Superman in Marvel. Hey, fanfic family. So glad to see you here again to continue this incredible adventure. As always, kindly remember, this story is 100% fiction, so don't go looking for dimensional portals in your closet. All rights to this fantastic novel belong to the original author. We're just your humble narrators of epic tales. Are you enjoying the fanfic? Show it by subscribing to our YouTube channel and dropping us a like. And if you're impatient for more exclusive content, our Patreon is your happy place. Chapter 26, Excitement. Joshua, your power, Gwen, with short hair, said in surprise. She felt that Joshua no longer had the aura that had frightened her before. Had his power disappeared? Just as Gwen was wondering, Joshua smiled and said, I'm in my normal form now. No spoilers, no rough pores. Sometimes a little mystery is more appealing. Joshua looked delighted, like a busty beauty in a white lace bra. You think it's beautiful, but the next moment she unhooks it, you feel a sense of loss. It's not that it's not beautiful, but sometimes a hint of mystery is beautiful and more alluring. Before, Joshua saw everything as transparent, which seemed boring and dull. But now, he no longer felt bored. Normal form, where's your power? Gwen asked. It's not gone. I can use it whenever I want. Joshua looked at the short-haired Gwen carefully. She was wearing black leggings that showed off her long, slender legs, with a perfectly perky butt. What was she wearing today? Joshua asked curiously. Gwen also noticed Joshua's gaze and turned around gracefully, looking very elegant. What's wrong? Gwen looked at Joshua, sensing a change in him. You look beautiful today. Joshua then left. A moment later, Gwen grabbed Joshua's hand, lifted him up, and pressed him against the wall. Their eyes met. Huh? Sorry, I just wanted to see what was wrong with you. Does this mean you have no power in this form? Yeah, Joshua said. Short-haired Gwen smiled and said, looks like it'll be fun later. Joshua didn't think much of it, then said, indeed, being invincible is boring. Gwen put Joshua down, and Joshua went to the living room. He sat on the sofa and planned to watch some TV. Damn, there were no spoilers. Peter always spoiled things, and it was annoying. Hi, Joshua, Gwen said in a slightly stiff tone, this lively tone still a little unfamiliar. Gwen, Joshua patted the seat next to him, motioning for her to sit. Gwen stroked her hair and sat down next to Joshua. She felt a little too close, their warmth palpable. It wasn't something she was used to, but somehow it felt exhilarating. Gwen felt like she was doing something incredibly exciting. Joshua suddenly realized something and pointed at her cheek. Gwen froze for a moment. Was he asking her to kiss him? Probably. Though a little embarrassed, Gwen leaned in and kissed Joshua's face. Her heart nearly leaped. It was truly thrilling. Gwen looked at Joshua nervously and shyly, only to notice Lin Rand's puzzled expression. Joshua's lips moved. Big sister, there's something on your face. Gwen noticed a movement and realized he wanted to kiss her. It was so embarrassing. This was her first time. After a moment of hesitation, Gwen finally cupped Joshua's face and kissed him. After a long moment, the two panted, staring at each other. Joshua tried to take things a step further, but Gwen pulled away, saying, sorry, I have to get back, Joshua. Afternoon. Penny stared at short-haired Gwen's blonde wig. Ever since she left Joshua's room, she'd been acting strangely, as if she'd done something wrong. Short-haired Gwen fixed the wig and said, Penny, let's go help Aunt May. Yeah, Penny nodded. While helping, Gwen would often glance at Joshua. In the past, Joshua would have known she was peeking, but now he was completely oblivious. Joshua was still watching TV, a parody show. Night. Penny, Gwen, and Peter, the three preteen Spider-Men, met on the rooftop. The Spider team was about to depart. The two adult Spider-Men had already gone off to help others. They were only out now because they were doing homework. Gwen took the longest time. Penny nimbly leaped into the mech, and the three of them quickly departed. Gwen, Gwen, Joshua called out Gwen's name. Joshua sighed. Gwen was dead after all. The two were playing a game and had nearly won. Although Joshua didn't have his abilities, he was still a top-tier player, but he no longer had the strength to fight 5 opponents alone. It was mainly because his brain wasn't calculating. Before, he could almost predict the opponent's skill releases, practically cheating. Now, he had to rely on intuition, inevitably making mistakes. Watching the failure on the screen. I'm such a wimp, Gwen said. It's okay, let's continue. A long time later, Penny and Gwen opened the window and came in, only to see Joshua's expression, numb, as if his heart had been shattered. Joshua put his headphones back on and looked at Penny and the short-haired Gwen. "Joshua, did you lose consecutive games?" Penny asked. She knew that expression all too well. Wasn't that the look of someone losing consecutive games? Joshua's mouth twitched. He nodded and said, "Yes, my heart is broken. I'm going to sleep. Good night, Makabaka." Joshua fell asleep. Early in the morning, the depressed mood of kneeling for several consecutive times had completely dissipated. Joshua washed in front of the mirror, and then Gwen appeared beside him and they brushed their teeth together. Gwen squeezed Joshua with her butt. Joshua's eyelids drooped. "What's so great about having a perky butt? Does having a butt mean you can squeeze anyone you want?" Joshua wanted to take a step back, but thought to himself, "Damn, I'm Superman, why should I give in?" So Joshua pushed back decisively. Gwen looked at Joshua, then exerted a little force with her butt and knocked Joshua away. Gwen was scared. She hurriedly pulled Joshua up. She forgot that Joshua was now in normal form. Joshua was fine, he just crashed through the bathroom door. Joshua glanced at Gwen and said unhappily, "What a terrible experience." Then he melted the glass and reshaped it into a brand new mirror. Gwen rubbed her head and said, "Sorry." Joshua left. Gwen sensed Joshua's anger. She stroked her short hair, feeling a little too proud of herself. A woman on the street looked at Joshua and said, "Hey, Superman, dance for me and I'll pay you." She pulled money from her pocket. "Sure." Joshua walked up to the woman and said, "You dance." The woman felt Joshua's presence was intimidating and frightened. Sorry, I think I disturbed you." The woman was on the verge of tears. Superman was having a bad day. "Dance, I dance," the woman said timidly, and began to dance, making many mistakes out of fear. "Money." Joshua spread his hands. The woman pouted, looking aggrieved. "Why should I pay you for dancing for you?" Despite feeling aggrieved, she still gave Joshua the money. "Joshua, stop being a bully," Peter couldn't help but say, seeing what Joshua had done. Joshua glanced at Peter and said, "Ask her if she's doing this willingly." Under Joshua's kind gaze, the woman said, her face on the verge of tears, "I'm doing this willingly, Peter." The woman hurried away. Joshua felt that becoming a completely ordinary person would be a bit troublesome. So he made some adjustments, perhaps a little stronger than Spider-Man and his friends. He arrived at school and put his backpack away. But a few minutes later, Joshua received a message, a call for help. Important government officials were being besieged by criminals. Joshua walked to the window and jumped out, then saw Joshua soar into the sky. "We're not going to die, are we?" the red-haired Natasha asked, looking at the one-eyed black man before them. They hadn't expected to be attacked by Hydra and trapped in an abandoned high-rise building. The one-eyed black man said, "We've got Superman, we should be fine." As soon as he finished speaking, a heavily armed man rushed in. Natasha raised her hand and pulled the trigger, instantly blasting him in the head. The two of them decisively left the area, and the next second, bullets began to rain down. Staring at the densely packed bullet holes, they both fell silent. Neither wanted to die. "Damn it. He's coming," a voice rang out from outside, like a scream. Gunfire rang out, then silence ensued. Natasha looked at Nick Fury. Nick said, "He should be here." Just as he finished speaking, Joshua flew in. He looked at Nick and Natasha and said, "So it's you?" Nick stood up and thanked Joshua. "No need for formalities, just give me the money," Joshua said. "No need for empty promises, just give me the money." Nick gestured for Natasha to pay, and Natasha quickly transferred the money to Joshua. Natasha couldn't help but take a closer look at Joshua's skin. It was bulletproof, smooth and silky, like a puppy's. Natasha was looking at Joshua, and Joshua was also looking at Natasha. Joshua has reduced most of his abilities now, so Natasha is still very beautiful. It's better this way. He remembered that there was a time when he didn't want to look at people's faces at all, because it was like looking at them through a microscope. Dead skin, pores, mites, etc. were uncomfortable to look at. Just as Joshua was about to leave, Natasha said, "Can you help me? Just pay me." Natasha nodded, and then she asked Joshua to send her to a military base. Originally, this was kept secret from others, but Superman was different. If he wanted to know something, no one could stop him. It was probably his Aunt May who could persuade him a little. To be honest, Natasha was a little worried that something would happen to the only person who could comfort Joshua, and that Joshua would do something crazy. Writing. I also know that my writing is poor. Does anyone have any good ideas to improve my writing? Chapter 27 Super Spider Woman. This was an underground base. Joshua spotted a large square, presumably used for training. Natasha had been gone for a few minutes, probably to report back. Hi, Superman. A man in combat fatigues approached Joshua. Natasha peered through the window at Joshua. Why did he send you here? Maria Hill was a little indignant. This was a secret base. While Superman might know about it, he shouldn't have been brought here. Natasha shrugged and said, this world is his. What's the use of knowing it? If there's nothing else, I'll leave. It's a rare day off, and I need to rest for a few days. Seeing Natasha's nonchalant expression, Hill sighed. Indeed, if Superman wanted to, he could rule the world. The reason he didn't want to rule was because he found it troublesome, not because he couldn't conquer it, but because the various problems that come with ruling are too much. She looked at Joshua. Superman was generally a good person, but he could have his moments of mischief. As long as she didn't mess with him and his family, that was fine. Hill rubbed his brow and said, come on, take a break. You deserve it. Natasha walked out. Joshua was demonstrating a one-handed tank swing. The people in the tank screamed in fear. Stop it, Joshua said to a soldier. How is that going? The soldier gave Joshua a thumbs up. He had just given Joshua $100 to stuff the officer into the tank and swing it. It seemed to be working brilliantly. This Superman was quite entertaining. The others laughed too. It was just that the officer was so annoying. Seeing Natasha coming, Joshua lowered the tank and said, the soldiers here are quite interesting. Natasha couldn't help but glance at the man vomiting out of the tank. She had seen Joshua's exchange with a soldier through the window. Although she couldn't hear the words, she could lip read and understood what they were talking about. As long as you like it. The two left the base a few minutes later. Joshua set Natasha down. This was Natasha's vacation spot, with its ocean and sandy beaches, a sign of wealth. After receiving his money, Joshua left. Joshua landed on the playground. The ground was shattered. An old man looked at Joshua and said, Joshua, I told you not to vandalize public property. You haven't fixed what you damaged last time yet. Got it? What are you complaining about? Joshua used magic to fix the broken floor. The old man snorted coldly, walked over, stepped on it a few times, and nodded in satisfaction, feeling it was solid. Joshua hurried to the classroom, where class was still going on. The teacher was a sexy woman who loved wearing thongs. Don't ask how he knew. Joshua, you've been skipping classes. Wow, you look sexy today too, Joshua said as he passed by. It's purple today, the teacher gaped at Joshua with a hint of resentment. This guy could see. Being watched while teaching, she felt her legs go weak. So exciting. Joshua walked to his seat. Gwen swung her long hair, hitting him in the face. She couldn't help but ask, what did you say to the teacher? Nothing, just stay in class, Joshua said. During recess, the teacher trotted off. Gwen, with her short hair, looked at Joshua and Gwen. Gwen buried her head in her arms. Joshua tried to pull Gwen's face, seemingly amused. Gwen, you and Gwen Stacy are so much alike, a boy said. He had a feeling Gwen Parker and Gwen Stacy were the same person. Maybe we are, Gwen said, then stood up. Walked over to Joshua, and joined the game. Gwen, with her short hair, pinched Joshua's face and said, that feels good. Yeah, Gwen nodded in agreement. Then, playfully, she reached out and tugged at Joshua's face, pulling it into all sorts of funny shapes. Ha ha ha, Peter's eyes never left Gwen, sometimes short-haired, sometimes long-haired. He looked at Joshua, hoping he'd let him join them, so he could touch Gwen's face. Sadly, Joshua didn't agree. Like a king, he wouldn't allow anyone else to touch his princess. Peter, reflecting on his mistake, lowered his head to his book. Only studying could save him a bit of dignity. It was afternoon. Joshua was walking down the crowded, noisy hallway. Suddenly, a teenager bumped into him. Joshua nimbly dodged, sending him careening into the wall. Why didn't you stop me? The teenager said, a little complaining. That hurt. Joshua glanced at the teenager and said, do you have a problem? The teenager looked at him, a little annoyed, but didn't say anything. Joshua turned and left, and the crowd made way for him. Only after Joshua left did the crowd gradually return to normal. Gwen saw Joshua leave the school gates, then turned back to the others and said, "It's time for the spider team to leave." Penny nodded. The four of them found a safe spot. Short-haired Gwen shed her clothes, revealing her battle suit underneath. She pulled her ballet slippers from her bag and put them on. Seeing Gwen still dressed, they asked, "Gwen, aren't you going to change?" Gwen replied with a hint of pride, "No thanks." A black substance then appeared and attached itself to Gwen, revealing a black battle suit. It had a hood, just like short-haired Gwen's, but Gwen's suit looked a bit more menacing. "That's outrageous," Peter exclaimed. He'd lived with Joshua since childhood, yet this guy hadn't given him a suit like this. Gwen was overjoyed. So, while everyone was close to Joshua, she was the most special. Gwen said, "Joshua said this way I'll have spider powers, so I can be a member of Spider Team." Gwen's battle suit was the product of something Joshua's suit had devoured after carnage. This thing possessed spider powers, so Joshua modified it and gave it to Gwen. Short-haired Gwen silently put on her ballet slippers. Suddenly, she felt annoyed. Then, a thought struck her, Joshua and I kissed on the couch earlier." Her mood brightened a bit. Everyone got up, already dressed. "Spider Team, let's go," Peter said. He was the captain, and only then did he feel good. How could he not feel good with three beautiful girls around? The silk Gwen spun was black, and she felt so cool. They climbed the tall building, Gwen stepping on the straight glass and looking at herself in the mirror. She looked so handsome. "Gwen, this is fun, isn't it?" Spider-Woman appeared beside her and said, "Very interesting." Suddenly, Gwen saw a little boy appear in the traffic. It was dangerous. Gwen quickly jumped down and spun her silk. The silk caught the wall, and Gwen swung up quickly. She caught the boy and threw him away. As he flew through the air, Gwen spun her silk into a web. The boy landed on the web. "Wow, awesome," everyone applauded. Gwen was overjoyed. "Who are you?" a girl asked curiously, looking at Gwen. The Spider Team had been getting more and more popular lately. I'm Super Spider-Woman," Gwen said, and left. Gwen soon reunited with Penny and the others. Gwen excitedly said, "I saved someone." Gwen felt happy, even happier than getting first place on the test. Joshua was scrolling through his phone when he suddenly saw the video of Gwen saving someone. Super Spider-Woman? He watched it several times and saw she had a great figure. Joshua put his phone down and planned to go out to buy groceries. Aunt May said they wanted beef hot pot today, so Joshua would be the one to run errands, since he was fast. "Hi, Superman," an old black man said. Joshua casually replied, but the old man approached Joshua and said, "Have you met Jenny? You know she's the apple of my eye. If you like Jenny, I can help you." Jenny was the old man's daughter. Although she was black, she was quite attractive, tall, with thin lips and bright eyes. She was the prettiest black girl in the neighborhood. Joshua knew Jenny and would occasionally run into her, but their relationship was casual, like that of ordinary friends. "Never mind, I don't like black people," Joshua said. "Jenny is different. She's clean, beautiful, and smart. She's not like those black people who only care about destruction." "She's clean," the old black man said, looking excited. Joshua glanced at the old man and said, "Did something happen to you?" The old man slumped down on the bench. He owed money, and his daughter had been kidnapped and planned to be sold to some weirdos tonight. He was terrified, and he couldn't find anyone to help him. Only Superman could help him. After hearing the old man's words, Joshua thought for a moment and said, "I remember you have a gem, right, you?" The old black man pointed at Joshua's chest, which was heaving violently, but soon he slumped down. He sighed and said, "If it means saving Jenny, I'll give it to you." Joshua nodded, but asking him to deal with a few criminals was a bit of a fuss, so he informed the Spider Squad. Joshua then patted the old man on the shoulder and said, "Go home and wait for your baby to come back." The old man nodded gratefully. Watching the old man leave, Joshua sighed. This old man used to be quite rich, but since his beloved wife left, this guy has become a jerk, living a life of drunkenness and debauchery every day. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 28 Gems. The spider team quickly completed the rescue, freeing Jenny. Peter waved goodbye and said goodbye. Seeing the spider team leave, Jenny headed home. All she wanted now was to get home. Someone had first taken her phone, preventing her from using the Superman app's powers, and then kidnapped her. It was clearly a premeditated plan. Suddenly, thunder roared in the sky. Jenny looked up, seeing dark clouds gathering. She started running, but after only 2 steps, large raindrops began to fall, piercing her skin. The downpour was so heavy that she had to wait outside a supermarket. Jenny touched her damp hair. Her face was delicate and perfect. She had recently been working as a model, earning a good deal of money. She wasn't afraid of unspoken demands. After all, the world's biggest bully was her neighbor, Joshua. As long as she claimed to be Joshua's friend and close friend, no one would mess with her. At work, she was labeled Joshua's woman, a convenient identity. Despite this public outward display, she and Joshua weren't particularly close. Joshua allowed her to say this because she gave him a monthly allowance, which he donated to others. That was the extent of their relationship. "What's your name?" a white young man suddenly asked, looking at Jenny. A black woman this beautiful was extremely rare, and the woman before him was probably a sex worker, and he was a little tempted. "Jenny Scott," Jenny said. "Jenny. Wow, that's a white name," the white young man said offensively. Jenny was used to it. People said that all the time, both when she was little and now. It seemed only with Joshua that she didn't feel any discrimination. He saw everyone the same. He was such a strange person. Jenny smiled and said nothing, not wanting to start a fight. The white young man then asked, "How much per session?" Jenny felt her dignity trampled upon. She bit her lip and said, "Sir, I'm not a prostitute, that's even better. I was worried you might have an STD." The white young man felt that for the money, the black woman should kneel down and serve him. Just then, Joshua emerged from the supermarket carrying groceries. He saw what Jenny and the white young man had just said. While Joshua disliked black people, not all of them did. Of course, a very small percentage, like Jenny, were one example. This girl had received a good education from a young age. Joshua grabbed the white young man and stuffed him into the trash can. Then, looking at Jenny, he said, "Want to join us?" "Yes," Jenny nodded. They stepped into the rain together, but it avoided them. "Thank you," Jenny said, looking down at the rain. "It's okay. I should do it. After all, your dad wanted to give me the gem," Joshua said. Jenny's mouth dropped open. The gem was her father's most important thing, and he actually gave it to Joshua? "Joshua, I want to redeem the gem," Jenny said. "Redeem it? That's fine. You should know the price," Joshua said. Jenny remembered that the gem was worth $200 million, a sum she could barely make. Seeing Jenny remain silent, Joshua spoke up, "You can pay in installments. Just give me a small amount each month. Since we're neighbors, I won't charge interest." Carrying the vegetables, Joshua looked incredibly mercenary. He first took Jenny home. Jenny's father pressed the gem into Joshua's hands and said, "Go, you black-hearted boy. You'll regret missing Jenny." Joshua looked at Jenny and said, "If you want to redeem it, remember to tell me." Joshua turned and left. "HMPH, what's so good about a broken stone?" the old black man cursed. Joshua returned home and handed the vegetables to May, who was preparing a feast today. Joshua played with the gem. It was beautiful. "So beautiful," Gwen exclaimed, looking at it. Peter also noticed the gem. He knew it belonged to the old black neighbor. He thought of Jenny, whom he had saved today, and the message Joshua had sent. "Joshua, you?" Peter looked at Joshua, feeling that this was taking advantage of someone in need. It was unjust. "Peter, this is a fair deal. I helped him, and he gave me the gem," Joshua said. Peter didn't say anything, but called Jenny, who soon learned what had happened. He hung up and said, "Joshua, the gem should be divided into 4 parts, Gwen, me, Penny, and you." Gwen also learned what had happened from Peter. She saved people without asking for anything in return. Penny shared the same idea, so the 3 of them decided that if Jenny wanted to redeem the gem, she only had to pay $50 million, Joshua's $50 million. Joshua agreed with Peter and the others. After all, $50 million for just one phone call was a good deal. Joshua returned the gem, and Jenny also paid a small amount. It looked like this guy really intended to spend his whole life paying it back. The next day, Joshua learned the old black man had sold the gemstones, and he immediately handed Joshua 50 million. The old man's eyes were sharp, and he said, "You've been such a jerk for so many years. It's time to realize that what's gone is irreversible. I will protect Jenny." Joshua seemed to see his former high-spirited self. He wasn't sure if the old man could ever make a comeback, but he knew the money he had would last him for a long time. Joshua let Gwen pinch his face, his mind lost. Gwen pinched Joshua's face and said, "That's interesting." Gwen said, "I'm going to party with my family today. You come with me." "No," Joshua said, coming to his senses. Parties were boring. "Come with me. There's a reward." Gwen's eyes sparkled. She had been preparing for this party for a long time, and she was sure to amaze everyone. She wanted Joshua to see her dazzle everyone. Joshua looked at Gwen, and he could see her anticipation. "Just give me the appearance fee," it was the expected answer, but Gwen still felt a little depressed and helpless. She pinched Joshua's face in retaliation and said, "Got it." That afternoon, Gwen told him about the party. "Wow, go ahead. Leave the peacekeeping to us," Penny said. Short-haired Gwen said, "So, Joshua's coming." "Exactly," Gwen said. Chapter 29 Kingpin. Gwen looked stunning in a pale pink gown. Her tall figure and delicate features showed she'd carefully dressed up. Gwen gracefully spun around in front of Joshua, her skirt lifted. "How's it going, Joshua?" "Very good," Joshua said frankly. He truly thought she was beautiful, but he'd seen quite a few people tonight, like the Kingpin. Wilson Grant Fisk was his name, the biggest boss of the New York City underworld. Joshua had never met him before, but he was a very respectable person, at least as far as Joshua could see. He'd also cleverly eliminated all the gangs near his home, leaving only a few low-ranking thugs. Kingpin was actually afraid his men might provoke Joshua, so every member of his gang was required to remember not to harm Joshua's Aunt May or his cousin, Peter Parker. This was practically the consensus of all the gangs. "What are you looking at?" Gwen asked, hugging Joshua's arm. He wasn't looking at her, but at a man? "Nothing." Joshua looked away. "What's going on here?" Tony asked as he watched people gradually enter. "It's a party. I heard quite a few people are coming, including Joshua." "Oh, then I'll go in and take a look." Tony suddenly looked at the waiter and said, "Do I need an invitation?" No, Mr. Tony, please feel free to do whatever you want," the waiter said hurriedly. Tony Stark was a man of many talents, and a party like this would be elevated by his presence. But Tony Stark came because Superman was here. Tony got out of the car, tossed the keys to someone, and left. The crowd quieted down as he entered the venue. He slapped a young woman's butt and said, "Wow, you're so sexy. I know I'm attractive, but everyone should remember this is a party." The young woman blushed, and Joshua naturally noticed Tony. Tony walked over and looked at Gwen. "Wow, you're so beautiful. Believe me, a playboy would suit you better." Gwen smiled, then took Joshua's arm and said, "He's the best." "Is that what they mean when they say beauty is in the eyes of the beholder?" "That's an old Chinese saying," Tony teased. Joshua looked at Tony, unsure of his business. Tony looked at Gwen and said very politely, "Beautiful lady, can I take Joshua with me?" "Don't worry, I won't steal him." Gwen nodded gracefully and left. Joshua looked at Tony and said, "Is there anything you want to tell me? Have you been to other universes?" Tony looked at Joshua seriously. "No, not yet," Joshua said. He hadn't been to other universes yet, but he planned to go sometime. "Do you know about PIM particles?" Tony suddenly asked. He'd noticed this from someone else's research. It was something incredibly bizarre and fascinating. He considered himself quite intelligent, but he felt it was a bit tricky. He hoped to get some inspiration, or perhaps even some help, from Joshua. "Yes, I've studied it too. I'll have Zero tell you everything I know about PIM particles later," Joshua said. Tony looked at Joshua and couldn't help but ask, "Have you studied it?" Joshua pulled a small crystal ball from his pocket. Tony leaned in and took a closer look, his eyes widening. Inside was a world. He even saw dinosaurs. Seeing Tony's astonishment, Joshua was delighted. He patted Tony on the shoulder and said, "Come on, catch up with me. You have a little bit of potential in terms of knowledge." Tony was a proud man, but now he felt that Joshua was going too far. He truly lived up to his name as Superman. He finished Joshua's drink and said, "I'll get it when I get back. I think this thing should allow us to travel through time. Let's go." Research was more appealing to him than women. Joshua said, "Remember to pay." Tony waved his hand and departed gracefully, patting a young woman's butt. He'd been pondering this for a long time. He felt that some aspects of the pimp articles were incredibly difficult to understand. As for asking Hank Pym, how could he possibly share his painstaking research with an outsider? So he thought of Joshua, and it seemed his suspicions were correct. Joshua knew the answer, perhaps even more deeply than Hank Pym. With Joshua's information, he should soon understand. As for money, he had plenty. Tony left happily. After Tony left, Joshua found Gwen. The party ended late. After watching Gwen get into George Stacy's car, Joshua turned back to Kingpin and asked, "What's up?" "No big deal, I just wanted to meet Superman. My name is Wilson Grant Fisk, but you can call me Kingpin," a tall, portly man said to Joshua with a respectful attitude. "Hello," Joshua said. Kingpin then said, "I'd like to make a donation in your name." Ha ha ha, Joshua couldn't help but laugh. Was this guy planning to donate his dirty money? Seeing Joshua's half-smile, Kingpin felt that Joshua knew about his situation. However, Joshua's inaction proved that his previous assumption was correct. If no one came to Joshua's aid and no darkness was visible to Joshua, then Joshua would not intervene. Kingpin was here to test Joshua's limits. He was a little worried that provoking Joshua would make all his previous efforts go to waste. Joshua said, "No, I need to get home." Joshua left. Kingpin watched Joshua's departing figure. It was a very torturous thing to have a Dark Lord so respectful, but it had to be so. After all, he was the Dark Lord of New York, and Joshua was the king of the world. He didn't even bother to rule the world. Kingpin thought it would be safer to stay away from Joshua. "Wow, are you alone? Do you need a beautiful female companion?" Spider-Woman suddenly appeared in front of Joshua, hanging upside down and meeting his eyes. Joshua nodded, and Gwen pulled the mask down and walked beside Joshua. Even if someone saw Spider-Woman dressed like that, they would think she was cosplaying. Gwen adjusted her short hair. The two walked slowly, looking like they were taking a stroll after dinner. Chapter 30, Every dog that passes by will be plucking its fur. It was early in the morning. "Gwen, Penny, you should get up. You have classes today." Joshua walked out of his bedroom and found Penny and Gwen still curled up in bed. Penny murmured drowsily, "I know. I'll be up right away." Despite her words, she showed no sign of getting up. They hadn't returned until midnight last night and had only slept for a few hours, so they were still incredibly sleepy. "Would you like me to ask for leave?" "Just say you two are sick," Joshua said. Gwen and Penny both drowsily opened their eyes. Gwen hugged Penny tightly, like a doll, and said, "Take a nap." Joshua walked out, and just as he closed the door, he heard the two girls whispering. Peter was eating breakfast. He looked a little dazed, as if he were daydreaming, probably from staying up all night too. Joshua washed up and began to eat breakfast. May also prepared breakfast for the others, which was as nutritious as ever. Snap, Gwen and Penny emerged. Penny smoothed her messy black hair as she walked in. "Good morning, Joshua, Peter, and Aunt May." "Good morning, Penny." Gwen went to the bathroom and brushed her teeth while looking at herself in the mirror. The redness in her eyes suggested she hadn't gotten enough rest. She also had dark circles under her eyes. She might need to put on some makeup to cover them up. Just then, Penny joined them. Looking at Penny, who was a head shorter than her, Gwen suddenly remembered, Penny seemed like a junior high student, yet now she was in the same class as her, doing well in class and actively answering questions. Penny was truly impressive. Putting her toothbrush away, Penny left. Gwen, beaming, put on a little makeup before leaving. By then, May had already prepared breakfast. Gwen sat down to eat, her eyes flicking over Joshua and Peter's faces. Joshua's hair was a bit long, almost like it could be tied up, but Peter's hair wasn't very long. Peter looked listless and sleepy. Indeed, they had traveled extensively last night and were exhausted. Joshua finished his meal and pulled out his phone to check for anything interesting. He saw a lot of news about Spider-Man. After a moment's thought, Joshua clicked on it. Young Spider-Man, Slaughter Spider-Man, Spider-Man, Mecha Spider-Man, Spider-Woman, and even Super Spider-Woman. Everyone had their own fan base. Joshua saw a sentence, "Spider-Man is a superhero, Superman isn't." He agreed with that. After all, he didn't want to be a superhero. This sentence received a lot of likes. Apparently, many people agreed. Peter, standing by, noticed what Joshua was reading and felt a little chuffed. Finally, He was more like a superhero than Joshua. Peter perked up and immediately said, "Joshua, maybe you could join Spider Team. That would improve your reputation." "Not interested," Joshua said, looking at Peter and continuing, "Screen snooping isn't a good habit." "I didn't mean to," Peter said. Joshua didn't bother arguing with Peter and put his phone away. Gwen and Penny had finished their breakfast by then. "Goodbye, Aunt May." The others said goodbye to Aunt May, who said, "Goodbye." They walked down the street, chatting as they walked. "Good morning, New York." "Good morning, Bank," a red-haired man, gun in hand, said cheerfully. "Get the fuck down now, I'm robbing a bank." "Someone in the bank." Joshua, Gwen, Peter, Penny, then a security guard said, "Brother, are you from out of town?" How could anyone not know this was Superman's neighborhood? "Yes, I'm from Canada." "Get down now." "I just want money," the red-haired man exclaimed excitedly, unaware that everyone here was looking at him strangely. Joshua hadn't expected someone to rob a bank here. Did they know this was his neighborhood? He walked towards the man. The red-haired man spotted Joshua and pointed his gun at him, saying, "Get out of here, kid." As someone from the lower classes living in a remote mountain area, he didn't really know Superman. Joshua continued walking. The red-haired man decisively pulled the trigger. Did he really think he was a good person? The bullet flew out. Joshua didn't even dodge, because he didn't need to. The bullet hit him, but it didn't even tear his clothes. Joshua snatched the gun, crumpled it into a pile of scrap metal, and tossed it into the trash can. Then he told the security guard, "Remember to tell the bank to deposit the money." The red-haired man was then tied up by Joshua. After doing this, Joshua was about to leave, but then he suddenly remembered that he had defeated the robbers, which was also a way of saving lives. So he started to collect money from the people here. A few minutes later, Joshua left, contented. Humph, even a passing dog would get a few hairs plucked. Peter was speechless. Wasn't this something that could be easily solved? Why charge money? Did Joshua really like money that much? Arriving at the school, long-haired Gwen hopped up to Joshua like a rabbit and said, "I didn't cheat last night, did I?" "Not bad, last night." Gwen hadn't cheated in a long time, which made him a little uncomfortable. As long as Gwen didn't give away money, the game would be easy to win. Gwen suddenly took out a notebook and filled it with notes, looking like she was showing off some treasure. "Hey, how about it? I spent a lot of time on this." Not wanting to cheat Joshua, she had been studying the game diligently lately. Joshua was impressed by Gwen's dedication. After Joshua settled in, Gwen whispered in his ear, "My dad said last night that crime has dropped significantly thanks to the Superman app, and he praised you. Because of the drop in crime, George Stacy had more time to spend with his family." "That's great," Joshua said. "It's now nearly impossible for someone without special abilities to commit a crime, as any passerby who charges the Superman app could easily defeat someone without special abilities." The two were chatting when the teacher arrived. The first class of the day was with the same sexy teacher from before. Joshua glanced over, as usual. "What color was the color today?" "Beige," Joshua muttered after a moment. "What?" Gwen heard Joshua mutter. "Nothing." "Was he looking?" The sexy female teacher glanced at Joshua while teaching. After noticing his bright eyes, her shyness seemed to disappear. Now Joshua probably didn't look at her because his eyes looked very bright and clear without any trace of lust. She began to teach seriously, but her eyes would always pass by Joshua. "I have finished writing this chapter and polished it a little bit. Let's take a look and see if there is anything missing." Chapter 31 Hulk. Bang! With a deafening roar, a dark figure suddenly burst forth from the desert, landing heavily on the ground. A massive, round steel door also crashed down beside it. He narrowed his eyes, revealing his true form as a small, green giant. Surround him, tanks soon approached, and helicopter gunships flew overhead, soon surrounding the giant. The Hulk gritted his teeth, glaring at the people around him. Then, roaring, he charged forward, knocking over a tank like a building block. His foot slammed down on the ground with such force that it shook slightly. In an instant, the Hulk was launched into the air like a cannonball, then sped away at breakneck speed, his massive arms outstretched as if trying to maintain his balance. The helicopter gunships immediately gave chase. A man in a military cap slowly emerged from where Hulk had fled. His eyes narrowed, his gaze piercing the spot where Hulk had left. "We need Superman's power now," Ross said, adjusting his cap with his hand. Hulk's terrifying strength was probably only matched by Superman. If Hulk could suppress Superman, Ross believed someone would soon begin to slay gods, and that God would be Joshua, the mortal god. An alien still trying to lord it over this world? Absurd. General, Superman refused my request, a man suddenly said. Why? Isn't it enough to just give him enough money? Give him money, we don't need it. Ross was a little furious. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, a perfect test of Joshua's strength. If Hulk possessed the power to overthrow Joshua, he would be the ultimate killer. After all, everyone depended on him to slay gods. No one, except the ignorant masses, wanted to live below Superman. A nearby man, terrified, immediately contacted Joshua. The battle between Superman and the Hulk is sure to be spectacular. The Hulk is incredibly powerful, even Superman would be injured by him. Here, May placed the tomatoes in the shopping basket, while Joshua followed, pushing the basket. May said, "Is it okay? You're not going." She had just seen Joshua checking his phone, perhaps needing help with something. "Nothing," Joshua said, but then his phone vibrated again. He took it out and saw that $100 million had been transferred to him. Joshua was tempted. Seeing that Joshua hadn't answered, May said helplessly, "Hurry up. You know it takes me a while to choose, Auntie May, I'll be back soon." Joshua turned and left. A black substance appeared and covered Joshua's body, soon forming a black battlesuit, followed by a black cape. "Wow, Superman, are you so handsome?" a boy nearby exclaimed. Transformation is every boy's ultimate dream. Joshua said, "I've always been handsome." Leaving the supermarket, Joshua took a deep breath and stopped trying to restrain his strength. Various voices began to enter his mind. "We need to hurry. Aunt May will be home soon to cook," Peter said. Then, a voice from farther away reached him. "We've found the Hulk." The target was locked. But there were even more distant voices. Joshua breathed. He was now so powerful that he could even sense other beings beyond the world. He took a second to adjust to his strength, then slowly took off, this time without damaging the ground. Roar, 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 Hulk roared, smashing into attack helicopters and tanks, his rage growing. Suddenly, he saw and heard something. A person flying towards him. A person flying? Hulk felt a tingle in his head. Was he going to grow a brain? But he sensed a deep threat and broke into a run. Every step shook the earth. Finally, he stomped his foot down on the ground with a loud roar, and the Hulk's massive body slammed into the flying person. Upon arriving, Joshua saw the Hulk charging towards him. He also needed to save time. Meanwhile, Ross, observing Joshua and the Hulk via satellite, grew excited. He had to hurt Joshua, absolutely had to. The others were also watching the impending collision between Superman and the Hulk. Joshua clenched his fists. "Sorry, I have to go home and get groceries for Hot Pot. If I had some free time, I'd fight you in a weaker position to pass the time, but Aunt May is waiting for me." Suddenly, everything slowed down. Hulk's movement seemed to be played in slow motion countless times, and he seemed to have stopped. Joshua then delivered a simple punch to the Hulk's face. It was a powerful blow, enough to hurt even the Hulk. The moment Joshua struck the Hulk, time returned to normal. In an instant, the Hulk crashed into the ground like a meteor. A massive crater was instantly smashed into the ground, and the Hulk lay within it, his eyes vacant. Then, his body began to shrink until it was reduced to human form. Joshua also slowly descended, and the figure in the crater stood up, shielding his eyes from the sun as he watched Joshua. The glare of the sun behind Joshua made it difficult to see Joshua's features, but he knew it was Superman. He spoke, "Are you Superman, Joshua? That's not bad. I wasn't afraid of beating you to death," Joshua said as he descended, looking at Bruce Banner. "I can sense his fear. He's like a child, a newborn." "You seem to have frightened him," Banner said bitterly. Joshua rubbed his head, feeling as if he had hit a child. Suddenly, Banner said, "I heard you could help someone for money. I think I might need your help." Banner felt that Joshua could help him escape the military. Joshua nodded. Banner smiled bitterly and said, "But I only have $10,000. $10,000 to ask Superman to help deal with the military was a fantasy, wasn't it?" Looking at the somewhat honest man before him, Joshua nodded. Banner said excitedly, "You might have to deal with the entire military. Are you really willing to help me?" He was a little incoherent. The military had made it impossible for him to have a normal life, and he was on the verge of collapse. "Okay," Joshua nodded. How could he not help this seemingly honest man who was on the verge of tears? Oh my God. Banner wiped his eyes with his hands and then fell to his knees. He began to cry, but more with joy. Joshua, he's from our military. Suddenly, Ross came over, his face grim. Not only was Hulk killed in an instant, but Joshua was also trying to steal someone, both of which he couldn't accept. He owes me money, Joshua said. Ross was about to say something, but Joshua simply said, shut up and get out of here if you want to live. Joshua walked over to Banner, yanking him forward and sending him flying into the air. Ross clenched his fists, anger and humiliation boiling in his chest. Joshua, you better stay invincible. Chapter 32 Banner and Tony. Are we going somewhere? Banner asked, looking at the still immature boy before him. He was now dressed in nothing but a pair of baggy shorts, looking rather unpleasant, and passers-by were frequently glancing at him. Let's go eat, but first, you might need some clothes, Joshua said. Yes, I do, Banner said. He really needed clothes, otherwise he'd look like a pervert. Remember to pay me later, Joshua said, adjusting his abilities to a perfect level, oblivious to the noise and the pockmarked face. The black battle suit slowly began to blend into his body, and the cape quickly vanished. Banner, meanwhile, was helped by a woman in a suit to select a handsome suit. Seeing this, Joshua swiftly paid, then said, remember to pay me back when you have money. He handed a bill to Banner and began walking. Suddenly, he turned back and said, you can choose not to come to my house for dinner. Banner saw this as an opportunity to strengthen his relationship with Joshua. He was well aware that only Superman could protect him now, so he needed to maintain a good relationship with Joshua. I'd be happy to, Banner said hastily. Let's go. The two quickly found Aunt May, whose basket was already overflowing with food. After all, with so many people in the house, it was essential to stock up on food, especially Peter and his friends, who were all big eaters. Joshua took the basket and pointed at Banner, saying, Aunt May, his name is Bruce Banner. Hello, Mr. Banner, May said with a smile. She felt Banner seemed like a very honest man. Hello, Banner replied immediately. A short while later, they left the supermarket. Returning home, Joshua found the Spider-Men all there. Banner, young Peter and Spider-Man Slayer clearly knew Banner, and they were both surprised by his presence. Banner, perplexed, looked at the two men, who looked almost identical, and said, we know each other? And are you two twins? Young Peter and the Slaughter Spider-Man told each other that they were from another universe. Wow, am I dreaming? Banner thought the parallel universe was a bit crazy, and he couldn't help but look at Joshua to verify the authenticity of the news. What they said is true, Joshua said. Banner couldn't help but say, it's amazing that people from parallel universes appear in this universe. Banner was very curious about the Spider-Men, so he started chatting with them. Joshua was not interested in their chat, so he prepared to play games. He looked at Penny, who was eager to play, and said, want to play a game? Penny nodded quickly at his invitation and said, you need a strong opponent. The two sat together. Gwen sat on the sofa reading a book and the two sat on the carpet playing games. They really like games. Gwen doesn't like games much. They had hot pot for dinner. Joshua, Peter and May were already used to it, but the others were not so used to it. Penny ate the hot pot almost by taking a sip of water and a bite of food. In the end, they commented that the hot pot tasted good but was too spicy. After dinner, Joshua took Banner away from home. As soon as they walked out of the block, they met Tony, a guy who drove a flashy red luxury car. He pulled down his sunglasses and said, Mr. Banner, do you want to go for a ride? Of course not as fast as you jump. Banner nodded a little embarrassedly. Tony Stark was a well-known guy. Tony looked at Joshua and said, little guy, do you want to chat together? No. You guys can just chat. After Joshua finished speaking, he looked at Banner and said, Mr. Banner, remember to pay back the money. After saying that, Joshua turned and left. Banner thought Joshua was in a hurry for money and said, Mr. Tony, can you lend me some money? I owe Superman money. Tony watched Joshua leave through the rearview mirror. He said, Dr. Banner, Joshua is not short of money. If he wants, all the money in the world is his. I know him very well. You can give him a portion every month, $1 or $100. Money is just an excuse for him to help people. You can even pay it back in your lifetime, and you can work for me in the future. Tony started the engine, and the car immediately made a low sound, just like a beast. The sun had set and the temperature began to drop gradually. Hi, "Are you interested in taking a walk?" Gwen appeared in front of Joshua and said. "Aren't you going to fight criminals today?" "That won't delay," Gwen said. When there were no more crimes, she would take a walk with Joshua, and when there were more, she would change clothes and go to fight criminals. He could only silently pray that the criminals would be a little quieter today. Okay. The two walked on the street. Gwen touched her short hair. She felt that the atmosphere seemed a little ambiguous, and her eyes couldn't help but look at Joshua. Gwen quite liked it, but the good times didn't last long, and soon a police car whizzed past. I may have to leave," Gwen said, although she liked the current atmosphere, but now someone might need her help. She took off her coat and jeans and handed them to Joshua. Joshua took the jeans and coat. Gwen quickly put on the mask, and then shot out spider silk to stick to a car. Bye. Gwen left, pulling the spider silk. Joshua took Gwen's things home and put them in her room. Gwen landed gracefully on the roof of the car, and her movements were so light that the driver didn't even notice her coming. Her eyes were fixed on the police car whizzing in front of her. When she found that the police car was about to turn, she hurriedly adjusted the direction and chased after it. A few minutes later, the police car stopped. Gwen also stopped. Suddenly, a ball of purple energy flew towards the police car. There was a young policeman near the police car, and Gwen fired spider silk to pull it away. The next second, the purple energy ball collided with a police car. Bang! A huge explosion engulfed the police car. Danger. At this time, the spider sense suddenly reminded her that there was danger, and Gwen quickly dodged. A piece of debris flew past her previous position. Gwen squinted her eyes, and she saw a man in an exoskeleton armor slowly walked out. In the light of the fire, this man looked like a devil. Gwen sighed. Although the crime rate has dropped, those who are still committing crimes are more difficult to deal with. Carelessness will make her suffer. Wow, Spider-Woman. The man picked up a motorcycle with his hands as he walked. It seemed that he was going to use the motorcycle as a weapon to attack people. The man started running, and faster and faster. It's recommended on, and the author is a human, not AI. It's just that the writing is too poor. Chapter 33 Vibranium. Spider-Woman's body was incredibly lithe, easily dodging the oncoming motorcycle. The man wielded it like a stick in the hands of a child. With a perfectly timed kick, Spider-Woman lifted her toes and landed a stunning kick on the man's jaw. Though she was a woman, she was still Spider-Woman, and her strength was equally astonishing. The man's unprotected jaw was struck, and he instantly stumbled backward, his entire body paralyzed. "Wow, that hurt," Spider-Woman exclaimed. She took a closer look and saw that he was only unconscious, not dead. The police officer, whom Spider-Woman had earlier rescued by pulling him apart with her web, approached. He looked at Spider-Woman and said, "Can you remove his exoskeleton? If he wakes up, we won't be able to control him." Of course, Spider-Woman, with her knowledge of mechanics, quickly removed the exoskeleton. "Thank you so much," the officer said immediately. "That's what every good citizen should do." Spider-Woman raised her wrist, releasing a web of silk, and then swung away. Watching Spider-Woman leave, the police quickly handcuffed a fallen man. The criminal scene these days is like hell for them, completely unstoppable. They can only rely on the Spider-Men to handle it, and then they'll clean up the mess. After a long patrol, Spider-Woman returned home. She delicately opened the window of Joshua's room and carefully crept inside. She was about to leave, but after a moment's thought, she looked at Joshua and said, "Joshua." No response. Was he asleep? Gwen couldn't help but reach out and pinch Joshua's nose. "Don't make a fuss." Joshua pushed Gwen's hand away. Seeing Joshua wasn't asleep, Gwen sat down beside the bed and said, "It's already 2 o'clock, and you're still up? You have class tomorrow." This reminded Joshua of Gwen, who often slept in class and had to be reminded several times by the teacher. "You should get some rest early, or the teacher will have to remind you in class tomorrow," he said. Yet, Gwen rose from her bed, suddenly turning back to look at Joshua. "Good night, good night." Gwen smoothed her hair and left Joshua's room. As Gwen opened the door, she saw Penny playing with her video game console, the light from the screen illuminating her serious face. Had she met her match? It was truly rare. Gwen lay in her bed, looking at Penny and saying, "Don't play for too long, or you'll get dark circles under your eyes." "Right away," Penny said. A few minutes later, Penny placed a video game console on the table and closed her eyes to sleep. A clear mind emerged. She'd been playing with one hand while eating chips with the other, making some mistakes, and she'd been consistently outmatched. Being so relentlessly outmatched was incredibly frustrating, and it drove her crazy. Fortunately, she managed to hold her ground, and ultimately defeated her opponent. After a weak performance, she drifted off to sleep, her mind clearing. Early morning. Joshua opened the door and saw Gwen dressing Penny. Penny looked groggy, clearly still asleep. Without a second thought, he patted his lips and yawned, saying, "Good morning." Gwen quickly dressed Penny and then walked out with Joshua. They brushed their teeth and washed their faces together. Joshua looked at Gwen, who was clearly imitating him, and said, "Are you imitating me? I just thought it would be fun to do the same thing." After they emerged, Penny went to wash up. Then Penny's mate came in and helped her wash her face, brush her teeth, and dress. Joshua couldn't help but glance at Penny's spider, which was so thoughtful. Penny, previously listless, perked up after washing up. She looked at Joshua and said, "Good morning, Joshua." "Good morning, everyone." Spider-Man Slaughter nodded, still maintaining his aloof demeanor. Young Spider-Man was the more talkative, reminding Penny to eat breakfast, get enough sleep, and so on, chattering profusely. Peter, who ate silently, would occasionally interject, leaving the 14-year-old Penny feeling somewhat frustrated. "Goodbye, Aunt May." After breakfast, the group said goodbye to Aunt May. "Goodbye," May said happily, feeling blessed to have these children around her. Penny, carrying her school bag, opened it and said, "Yes, I'm the first one out today." Penny was a very lively person, always amazed by everything, as if she was always happy. Joshua then said, "I'm the tallest." Penny had a magical power that suddenly made those around her seem childish. The atmosphere suddenly became strange and lively. Penny jumped onto the mech, proclaiming that she was the tallest. Joshua slowly took off, demonstrating that he could fly. Gwen facepalmed and said, "Joshua, you're in high school now. You need to look good." "Penny's in high school too, HMPH. I'll equip the mech with flight gear tonight." The two of them began discussing the mech's design. "Joshua, can you get some vibranium? I might need some." Penny planned to give the mech a complete upgrade. "Sure, I'll do it after class. Do you think it looks cool?" Penny took out a piece of paper and a pen and roughly sketched out a tall mech. That looks cool. How about black?" "No, black's too gloomy. I want red and blue." The two of them discussed all the way to school. It was afternoon. Gwen, her hair in a ponytail, asked, "Joshua, do you want to go to the basketball game?" "Not interested." "Bye, Gwen, I have something to do today." Joshua took off into the sky. Gwen sighed as she watched his figure gradually diminish. She was looking forward to seeing him play basketball. Soon, Joshua passed through an energy barrier and saw a prosperous country. This was Wakanda, a country with outrageous technology. He found a young black man. "Joshua, what can I do for you?" T'Challa asked. "I need some vibranium." T'Challa looked at Joshua and said, "Your body is even harder than vibranium. You don't need it, do you?" Joshua's cells were the toughest substance in the world. "It's for someone else. I can pay for it." T'Challa looked at Joshua and said, "I need to discuss this with the others. After all, vibranium is not allowed to be leaked." "Okay, I'll sit here and wait." Chapter 34 Deterrence. "Vibranium is ours," a high-ranking Wakanda official roared in near incomparable fury. Vibranium was the treasure of this land, the very foundation of Wakanda's existence. It must not be sold to anyone so easily. Suddenly, another impatient black youth spoke up, "But this entire world belongs to him. If he wanted, he could easily slaughter every Wakandan and take the vibranium for nothing. We shouldn't gamble. We shouldn't be the victims of someone testing Superman's limits, nor should we gamble on Superman's kindness. Since he's willing to pay, then we should sell it to him. Faced with such a huge disparity in power, we should learn to be submissive. And since he's here with sincerity, we should just sell it to him at a reasonable price." This young black man, a frequent voyager, was well aware of Superman's power. It could be said that Wakanda could be tough with other nations, except for Superman, because he was the strongest. Since he was willing to pay, then we should sell it to him. "Weak. Where's your Wakanda warrior spirit? You're too weak," the old man continued to roar. He believed Wakanda was the strongest. Although he had heard a little about Superman, he didn't believe Superman alone could take on the technologically advanced nation of Wakanda. The young man shrugged and said, "Then challenge Superman. If you defeat him, I'll listen to everything you say from now on." Although the old man was now 60 years old, he was still very strong. He looked at the young man and snorted coldly, then said, "I will prove that the Superman you've always feared is nothing." The old man stormed off. T'Challa also knew that some of the old men in Wakanda were complacent and needed time to accept the changes in the world. It was Superman, not Wakanda, who now dominated the world. Arrogance was unacceptable. Joshua was sitting when he suddenly saw a large group of people coming out. At the head of the group was a muscular black man with a furious expression, as if he was ready for a fight. Although Joshua's senses were severely limited, he couldn't tell what they had said, but from their expressions, he could still infer what had happened. Perhaps the old man refused to sell him the vibranium and arrogantly believed he could fight him. Well, it seemed he had to show some strength. After all, it was a deterrent. If it was strong enough, he could easily take the vibranium. Joshua had originally planned to buy it for a reasonable price, but now that he wanted to resolve the issue through combat, he was only willing to pay $1. T'Challa said, "You know, Joshua, some of the elders in Wakanda are reluctant to accept change. You may need your fists to tell them that the world has changed." Joshua nodded. T'Challa quickly led the group to a clearing, with withered grass beneath their feet. Joshua walked into the grass and met the old black man's eyes. The old man threw his coat to the ground, revealing his muscular body, the lines of which had a unique beauty. "I've heard of you, but the world overhypes you. Now it's time for you to see that Wakanda's power isn't what you think." The old man, like a mighty leopard, rushed toward Joshua, his speed so rapid that he reached him in a split second. He clenched his fist and launched a punch at Joshua, a blow powerful enough to punch through a wall. But Joshua easily caught a ferocious blow with his raised hand. He wasn't interested in playing around anymore, so he kicked the old man back. He continued to fly like a cannonball, tumbling across the ground for 100 meters before finally coming to a stop. He curled up on the ground, motionless, like a fetus. Joshua's kick incapacitated him. But Joshua knew it wasn't enough. He raised his foot and stomped it down. The ground shattered, and all of Wakanda sank significantly. Everyone nearby was swept away, falling into the cracks. This catastrophic force made the people of Wakanda realize the terrifying power of Joshua. After a moment, a dusty T'Challa said, "You've convinced them with your strength. Now we can discuss the vibranium deal." He dusted himself off as he spoke, looking incredibly elegant. Even Joshua felt he was too elegant, a prince indeed. The others also rose one after another. $1, I'll only give you $1, Joshua said. Since they had already started, they couldn't do it in vain. Okay, T'Challa nodded. Joshua had come with good intentions, but after being disrupted, it was clear he wanted to intimidate everyone. So, he only gave $1. Wakanda had no shortage of money, and even if Joshua took the vibranium for free, they would have to bear it. Then, T'Challa took Joshua to get the vibranium. Joshua selected a pile of it, enough to fill a large room. After opening the portal, Joshua threw the vibranium across. After moving the vibranium, Joshua handed T'Challa $1 and said, "Here you go." Yes, T'Challa took the dollar. "Goodbye," Joshua said as he entered the portal. As the portal slowly vanished, T'Challa walked out with $1. He handed the dollar to the angry old man and said, "He's shown great kindness by wanting to communicate with us. Don't provoke him." The angry old man felt humiliated. He looked at T'Challa as he was about to leave and said, "Is he really invincible?" T'Challa paused, looked back at the old man, and said, "Yes, wow, wow, wow. So much vibranium? How did you get it?" Penny exclaimed. It was enough for her to build several robots. Joshua said, "Come on, Penny, we should start researching, let's go," Penny said eagerly. Because of the equipment, they arrived at Stark Tower. Joshua felt like he was at home. Tony and Banner arrived later. "Wow, what are you going to do this time?" Tony said in a bad mood. "Did this guy think this place was a factory?" "I'll assist Penny in designing the mecha, and you can also express your ideas." Penny waved her hand and said, "Hi, Mr. Tony, I know you, I'm your fan." Penny chattered non-stop, and when she realized that she still had to design the mecha, she covered her mouth and said, "I talk too much." Penny is very cute. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 35 Mecha. Since it was Penny's mecha, Her design was primarily based on her design, with Joshua, Tony, and Banner contributing to its refinement. This meant it was destined to be a truly remarkable mecha. While helping, Tony also secretly learned some of Joshua's more impressive technology. This time, he'd profited greatly. With all the materials available and the hard work of several people, the mecha was completed very quickly, taking only a single night. Penny's mecha stood tall, approximately 10 meters tall. Its color scheme remained similar to her previous, rounder mecha, but it was considerably more stylish. Tony silently surveyed Penny's mecha, unsure of what to think. Banner's knowledge enabled Penny's mecha to absorb gamma rays, and the perfect invisibility they had jointly designed made it incredibly powerful, even more powerful than Tony's own. Tony felt it was time for an upgrade. While helping Penny, he had gained a wealth of knowledge, which would allow him to make the mecha even more powerful and give him many new ideas. "Joshua, I want to sleep," Penny suddenly said, resting her head against Joshua's abdomen. She was drowsy. Working on the mech had cost her countless brain cells. Now all she wanted was to go home and sleep comfortably on her soft yet incredibly comfortable little bed. The sounds around her gradually faded away. Joshua held Penny, and then his spider entered the mech, controlling it as it prepared to depart. "Is little Penny asleep already? I have to say, she's a real little genius." Tony couldn't help but praise Penny. She was adorable, smart, and incredibly kind. Who wouldn't love such a little thing? Tony couldn't help but pinch little Penny's cheek. Banner, with dark circles under his eyes, sat on the floor, leaning against the wall. He, too, felt a strong sense of drowsiness. To repay Tony for taking him in, he had been working day and night, often staying up until midnight. Last night, he had been racking his brains to help Penny. Now, he felt like his soul was about to leave his body. It was a terrible feeling. He wanted to get some sleep. He couldn't wait to sleep. Joshua carried Penny away. Tony glanced at Joshua and the mech as they left, then turned back to see Banner sleeping with his eyes closed. "Why are you working so hard?" "I'm not some ruthless boss." He was well aware of Banner's late nights, and it looked like they needed to have a good chat later. He considered Banner a friend with a somewhat simple appearance but also a brilliant mind. Joshua put Penny to bed and then went to sleep in his own. He needed some sleep, otherwise he'd feel like something was undone. Gwen sat with Aunt May watching TV. Young Spider-Man and Spider-Man Slaughter felt the three of them were working too hard, studying during the day, fighting crime at night, and often staying up late. So they wanted them to have a good rest on Saturdays and weekends, leaving everything else to them. So, Gwen finally got to watch TV with Aunt May. Gwen felt she needed some time to rest and recharge. She'd originally planned to take Joshua for a run this morning to get some fresh air, but since he wasn't around, they had to give up. Glancing at the time, it was almost 11. Aunt May had gone to cook dinner punctually. Seeing Aunt May leave, Gwen lost interest in watching TV and decided to go check on Joshua. She fixed her short hair and looked in the mirror. Perfect. She went upstairs and opened her own door to see Penny curled up in bed, the covers kicked back. Seeing this, she walked over to Penny's bed and carefully covered the covers. Then, contentedly, she opened Joshua's door. Penny murmured, "It's so hot," and kicked the covers back. It took several kicks before she finally managed to get them to a more comfortable position. "Gwen, it was indeed quite hot today." She cautiously walked into Joshua's room and carefully closed it behind her. She looked over at Joshua and found he was still asleep. He was sound asleep, his breathing steady. If you listened closely, you could even hear the faint snoring. He was sound asleep. Gwen curiously pinched Joshua's nose, but he didn't react much, just smacked his lips a few times. She suddenly thought of a lemon. Would the sourness wake him if she dripped lemon juice into his mouth? But then she thought better of it. Although she was a bit more playful than the Gwen of this world, such a prank shouldn't be pulled. After pinching Joshua's cheek, she left the room, taking his guitar with her. It was a superb guitar. In her world, she loved it. She went into the living room and strummed it, finding the tone perfect and the feel incredibly good. It was truly wonderful. Gwen began to play. The sound of the guitar echoed through the room. Peter paused, listening quietly for a moment. Then, checking the time, he set his pen aside. It was time for dinner. He walked out of the room and saw Gwen playing guitar. Her short hair looked dashing and handsome, captivating Peter. Perhaps this short-haired Gwen suited him better than her long hair. Blocking the way, Joshua's voice suddenly rang out from behind him. Peter made way and watched Joshua and Penny go downstairs, apparently to wash up. He walked downstairs to the living room. Tomorrow was Sunday, a good day, and he planned to invite Gwen out for a stroll. But he was too nervous to speak, and he clenched and unclenched his hands repeatedly. "Peter, how was my playing?" Gwen suddenly turned around and looked at Peter. "Wow," Peter pointed at Gwen with 2 fingers and said, "Very good, but now I have to see Aunt May." With that, he left, still lacking the courage. Joshua and Penny came out a moment later. Penny, now fully recovered, jumped in front of Gwen and said, "Gwen, I have a supersized mech now, and I've also prepared brand new suits for you so you don't have to be afraid of bullets." "Really? Thank you, sweet little Penny." Gwen hugged Penny and kissed her several times, as if she were a human doll. "Hey," Penny laughed happily. Gwen had always taken care of her like an older sister. Before she came to this universe, Gwen had taken care of her in everything, so she cared about Gwen too. Chapter 36: The Girl Who Wants to Blow Up the School. "Joshua, do you remember the elementary school we went to when we were little?" Peter asked as they walked. He'd stumbled upon a story about the elementary school, which seemed to be closing due to substandard facilities. The old principal was trying to raise funds to keep it afloat. "Oh," Joshua said, unconcerned. His gaze fell on Penny's side. Although Penny appeared to be alone, a giant mecha, over 10 meters tall, was actually standing beside her, now invisible. Gwen, also in her school uniform and black stockings, walked beside Penny, looking youthful and beautiful. She clutched a few books, her expression vibrant and moving, though it was interrupted by the ringing of the school bell. A gentle breeze rustled Gwen's short hair. She used her left hand to gently hold the book to prevent it from sliding to the ground, then used her right hand to smooth down her wind-ruffled hair. Out of the corner of her eye, she glanced at Joshua, who was watching her. Quickly fixing her hair, she raised a slight smile and continued chatting with Penny. "Don't you think Gwen is beautiful?" Peter asked. Gwen's casual glance made him feel as if he wasn't that far removed from her. Yet, they soon arrived at school, and as they entered the classroom, Joshua noticed Gwen, with her long hair, sitting at his desk, chatting with someone. Her long hair was still neatly styled in a ponytail, and his gaze could be seen on her fair, slender neck, which looked both fragile and beautiful. Joshua approached, and Gwen, with her long hair, got down from his desk and sat down in her own seat. After he put his bag away, she said, "Morning, Joshua." "Good morning, Gwen." Joshua's nose twitched slightly, the faint scent of Gwen still lingered on the desk. The two began chatting, Gwen complaining about her brother, who was sometimes difficult to deal with and who she took care of while her mother cooked. Joshua listened silently, occasionally chiming in. Peter pursed his lips and placed his pen on it, his eyes darting between the short-haired Gwen and the long-haired Gwen. They were alike yet different. The long-haired Gwen was gentler, the short-haired Gwen cooler. Personality-wise, Peter thought he might be more compatible with the long-haired Gwen. But the short-haired Gwen's coolness was also quite captivating. While Peter was pondering this, his deskmate was more alert. The short-haired Gwen would occasionally glance past them, really just at Joshua, but Peter seemed to have misunderstood, or perhaps he knew but didn't want to think so. Never mind. After all, they were still young, so he decided not to remind her. It was afternoon. Joshua, carrying his school bag and his skateboard, was now the spider team, consisting of the two Gwens, Penny, and Peter, keeping the peace. He yawned and stared at the traffic light. Just then, his phone rang. Joshua answered. "Are you Superman?" A childish voice, perhaps only 7, asked. "Yes, I am. Mom, how can I help you?" He put down his skateboard and scooted forward. "I need you to help me blow up the school," the childish voice asked. "Why do you want to blow up the school?" Joshua wasn't expecting such a question. He was a little confused, but he found it quite interesting. "It hurt me. I have $1. The address of the school is," the childish voice spoke methodically. Joshua realized that this school was the elementary school he had attended. Peter had just told him that morning that the school was closing. But the principal seemed to be struggling to keep it going. "Can you do it?" the childish voice continued. "Yes, sure." Then he received $1. "By the way, I want to see a video of the school being destroyed," the childish voice continued. "No problem, Mom." After hanging up the phone, Joshua adjusted his direction. A moment later, he arrived at his former elementary school. The old principal was sitting at the door with a gloomy face. The principal stood up when he saw Joshua, and he gave Joshua an awkward smile and said, "Long time no see, Joshua." The old principal and Joshua had always been at odds. The old man was full of moralizing, which made people dislike him, but he was actually a good person. "Record it for me." Joshua handed his phone to the principal, who looked at him puzzled and said, "What are you doing? A lady asked me to tear down this school. After all, there are no students now." The old principal's mouth moved, and he looked a little painful, but he still honestly used his phone to record the video. There were indeed no students, so it was better to let him tear it down. Then he saw Joshua fly up, and then his hot eyes suddenly shot out, tearing the school apart and destroying it. In a short while, the school was reduced to ruins. After everything was done, Joshua came to the old principal's side. He sent the recorded video to the little girl from before. "I'm very satisfied," a tender voice said. The principal on the side widened his eyes. This voice belonged to his granddaughter. "Goodbye." Joshua strode away. But the next second a text message appeared on the principal's mobile phone. This was compensation for Joshua's destruction of public property. This was a large sum of money, which could have built a better school. He looked at Joshua's back and suddenly didn't know what to say. Maybe he shouldn't force Joshua to be a godlike person. When the old principal returned home, he saw his cute little granddaughter with a look of guilt on her face. "I asked Superman to destroy the school." In the eyes of the little girl, the school was the source of the old principal's pain, so she asked Joshua to destroy the school. She didn't want to see her once very cheerful grandfather continue to suffer. The old principal hugged the little girl and said, "I know, the difficulties have been resolved, don't worry about me." In the evening, Gwen sat next to Joshua and said, "The news said you destroyed public property." "Yet," Joshua did not deny it. "Is there a reason?" "I don't think you would destroy public property for no reason and still be fined." Gwen looked at Joshua curiously. Joshua told her about the little girl. "So you lost more for this dollar?" Gwen's mouth curled up slightly. The old principal was distressed because of the school, so his granddaughter spent $1 to ask you to destroy the school, and then you went, and it was obvious that you did it on purpose. Gwen investigated a lot of things after seeing the news. Gwen continued, "You know the old principal couldn't bring himself to ask you for help, so after receiving the call from the little girl, you thought it was a good excuse to make the old principal feel at ease to accept your help." During dinner, Peter also said that Joshua and the old principal of the elementary school did not get along well. The old principal wanted Joshua to be a godlike person, but Joshua had his own ideas, so he didn't get along well. "You think so of the old principal?" Gwen said this at last. "Well, a conservative good guy, but he is hard to like. I don't know if you have seen a video about a little girl who wants to blow up a school. This story is an adaptation of the video." Chapter 37 Bamboo Shoots. "Good night, Joshua." After chatting with Joshua, Gwen began to feel sleepy. She rubbed her sore eyes, but tears welled up uncontrollably, and her sleepiness only deepened. "Good night, Gwen," Joshua said. Gwen yawned and squinted as she left Joshua's room. After closing the door, she noticed Penny still playing games, so she casually reminded her to go to bed and settled into bed. Joshua closed the game and stretched out. After a while, he received a message saying a group of wealthy people with nothing better to do were playing with a submarine, and now they had an accident, so Joshua was needed to rescue them. "Superman would probably agree, since I heard he loves money," a woman said, looking at the man next to her. "It depends on his mood. And these wealthy people shouldn't have any dirty deeds on them, right?" the man said, puffing on his cigarette. Joshua's behavior was unpredictable. After all, he could do whatever he wanted, and no one could stop him. "A dirty place." The woman immediately glanced at the profiles of the wealthy individuals, reading through them all at once. "It seems they're all running some shady businesses, but they're handling them cleanly. We have no evidence." The man then inhaled his cigarette and exhaled. "These people are hopeless. Superman won't save them. He wouldn't waste his time on a few scumbags, but if you save them, you'll get a ton of money." Would Superman do anything for even $1? The woman was new. The man glanced at her, then couldn't help but smile. "Don't assume Superman is worth anything." Just then, they received a message from Joshua. "I'm sleepy. I have class tomorrow," he declined. Early in the morning. "Big news. I heard a few wealthy people died in a submarine accident," Peter said as he ate. Aunt May brought Penny's breakfast and said, Don't use your phone while you eat, okay? Peter put down his phone. He glanced at Joshua. If he had told Joshua in time, he might have been saved. Suddenly, Joshua's phone rang. Excuse me, are you Superman? A timid voice, probably a young girl, spoke in Chinese, her tone sounding anxious. My father is injured, and the bleeding won't stop. The village doctor said he needs to be taken to a large hospital, but we live in a remote mountain area, and getting there would take at least a day. Sob, the girl sobbed. She had no other choice but to do this. Although everyone said Superman's claims of helping others were fake, this was her only hope. Suddenly, she froze. Could Superman understand? Joshua stood up and said, I have something to do. Seeing Joshua leave, the others looked at each other in confusion. Peter said, what did the Chinese girl say just now? I don't know. Gwen shook her head. She had never studied Chinese. Superman? Humph, how could he come without money? A teenager looked at the girl and said, as if to say she was wasting her time. The girl bit her lip as she watched her father's thigh, injured by the tiller. The thigh was lacerated extensively, and the bleeding wouldn't stop. Her heart ached at the sight of her father's pale face. Please, Superman, if you can save my father, I'll give you everything. The girl could only pray silently. Suddenly, a massive sonic boom erupted. Startled, the girl looked up to see a black-haired boy descend from the sky, carrying what looked like a medical kit. Joshua hadn't studied medicine before, but he'd used his super brain to gather information on the way here, and he figured he could manage the wound. He's really here, the boy muttered. Joshua dismissed the nearby personnel and began the surgery, which was completed swiftly, taking only seconds. After treating the wound, Joshua handed the girl the bill. The girl was surprised to see it said local specialties, so, could local specialties be enough? Seeing the girl's dazed look, Joshua said, the treatment was perfect. All you need is some anti-inflammatory medication. The girl looked at her father's increasingly rosy face and said, do you really only want local specialties? Yes, I have to go back to class soon. If I don't have any, I'll just owe you. I'll pay you later, Joshua said. Yes, the local specialty here is bamboo shoots, so the girl brought back a large quantity. Joshua only took enough to stir-fry a dish and left. Seeing Joshua fly away, the boy asked, is he a god? The girl and the others carried her father home. Back home, Joshua handed the bamboo shoots to Aunt May and said, this stir-fried meat is delicious. May had learned a lot of Chinese cuisine for Joshua, so she knew exactly how to prepare bamboo shoots. She took the shoots and said, is this the reward? It's tender and delicious. I like it. After all, as long as I like it, it's fine, Joshua said. May put the bamboo shoots away, stroked Joshua's hair, and said, I love you. Me too. Joshua entered the living room, where the others hadn't left yet. Seeing him emerge, Penny said, come on, we should go to class. I'm the first one out again today. Joshua remembered what Spider Team had done yesterday afternoon. Penny, piloting her mech, had taken down a number of dangerous terrorists, but she'd also frightened quite a few people because her mech was so intimidating, like a giant. After donning the suits Penny had prepared, Spider Team's strength increased dramatically, but their destructive power also increased. As for compensation, Spider Team wouldn't care, they didn't have the money. Fortunately, if Spider Team had arrived in time, no one would have died. Peter then said, Joshua, didn't you see Penny's impressive display yesterday? She took out an opponent with a single punch. Joshua, you should join us. That way, you can put your abilities to good use. Peter continued, still trying to persuade Joshua to join Spider Team. I'm not interested in being a superhero, he began. They hadn't taken a few steps when a police car roared past. Gwen, Peter, and Penny exchanged a glance and said, Spider Team, let's go. The three of them found a quiet place to change clothes, while Joshua tightened his backpack and headed towards the school. Chapter 38, Destroyed Streets. Penny, controlling the mech, suddenly grabbed a several-meter-long concrete pillar and swung it at the man in front of her. But the man was incredibly agile, neatly dodging the blow. Here I come, Peter suddenly burst out from a corner, anticipating the man's landing point after dodging Penny's attack and sending him flying with a powerful punch. The man's body slammed into the wall, but Peter didn't hold back, for this man was no ordinary man. It hurts, the man rubbed his face. The strength was absurd. Gwen, having evacuated the others, quickly rushed over. It seems you're at your wit's end. I surrender, The man raised his hands, signaling his refusal to continue fighting. Fighting the spider squad was more difficult than escaping prison. He preferred that to facing them. Gwen wrapped the man with spider silk and then turned to look at Peter and Penny and said, "We're going to be late." The three of them left in a flash. Penny's mecha disappeared while running. It was in stealth mode and made no sound when running. The three of them were very fast and arrived at school in a short while, but they were still late. The teacher had already entered the classroom. "Wow, you are late. Is the reason you are late because you were busy saving the world?" the teacher teased casually. Peter, Gwen, and Penny walked into the classroom with a wry smile. Gwen, with a ponytail, whispered in Joshua's ear, "They were just fighting a muscle monster." Long-haired Gwen, "Don't talk in class." Gwen sat down immediately and waited until the teacher looked away before she playfully stuck out her tongue at Joshua. She began to listen attentively. When the bell rang, she leaned over the table and looked at Joshua beside her and said, "Oh, the teacher scolded me again." "Don't talk, or the teacher won't scold me," Joshua said as he read a comic book about a pair of childhood sweethearts. Their daily lives were sweet, but most importantly, they were funny. The book had been bringing him a lot of joy lately. It was just something to pass the time. Gwen reached out and poked Joshua's face, her hand soft. Seeing no reaction, Gwen pinched his face and said, "That's funny." Joshua pulled her hand away and said, "Don't bother me." Gwen pouted and leaned over the table, watching the man reading the comic book next to her. It was noon. As soon as get out of class ended, Joshua, backpack on his back, headed out. He was going home for lunch. Peter and the others hurriedly bought some food in the school cafeteria and then jumped from a tall building to watch the city. Peter watched Joshua skateboarding away from the school and said, he went home for dinner. Suddenly, Peter's burger lost its flavor. He envied Joshua for the delicious meal he'd be enjoying. But saving lives was more important than satisfying his appetite. Suddenly, Peter smelled something. He looked over and saw Penny sharing her lunch with the two Gwens. Peter finished his burger silently. "Hey, Superman, why aren't you flying?" a man said, looking at Joshua. "I don't want to fly," Joshua said, glancing at the man. Before the man could say anything else, Joshua had already skated away. "Wouldn't it be better to fly?" the man muttered. Joshua wasn't fast, but not slow either. By the time he got home, May had just finished preparing lunch. After putting his skateboard and school bag away, he said, "I'm back. Don't they have time to come back for dinner today?" May came out and looked at Joshua. "You know, they're all busy. I'll go wash my hands first." "Okay." Only May and Joshua ate lunch together, while the others were busy helping others. After they finished, Joshua took his skateboard and said, "Auntie May, bye." "Yeah, bye." Leaving home, he slowly skated to school. "Hi, Joshua." Jenny, a black girl in a school uniform and ponytail, called out to Joshua. She trotted over, carrying a book. Her legs were slender and long. Joshua slowed down slightly. "Where's Peter?" Jenny asked after not seeing him. "He's eating at school," Joshua said. "Oh." Jenny walked beside Joshua, carrying a book. After a while, she said, "Thank you for last time." "No thanks for paying," Joshua said. Jenny smiled and said nothing more. "Superman, are you having an affair with a black guy?" the white young man couldn't help but ask as he saw Joshua and Jenny walking together. Jenny's mouth tightened. Joshua's gaze fell on the white youth. There were always some foul-mouthed people, so he said, "Shut up." The white youth stopped talking, because even Superman had a temper. If he got mad, he'd probably go to hell. After a while, Jenny said, "Goodbye, Joshua." Yeah, Jenny had to go back to her cram school. Wow 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 wow, Penny, piloting her mech, descended from the sky, instantly cracking the ground. Fortunately, she managed to catch a falling person. She set the person aside and looked upward. Suddenly, glass shattered, and several figures plummeted. It was Peter and the others. Peter used webs to grab the two Gwens. Penny's mech clenched its fist and swung it at one of the falling people. Bang! The iron fist sent the man flying, sending him crashing into the wall. He quickly stood up. He looked tall and muscular. A mutant, he wasn't very powerful, but he was incredibly durable. He'd only intended to rob a passerby, but he'd unexpectedly attracted the spider squad. "What a shoo-in." "Give up," said the super spider woman, also known as long-haired Gwen. The man grabbed the car and hurled it at them, then dashed down into the sewers. Peter went in to take a look, then emerged moments later, shaking his head and saying, "The man's gone." The spider squad quickly departed. Professionals soon arrived to clear the scene. As Joshua passed by, a young man working on Rebel said, "Hey, Superman, would you mind helping us? He'd been doing this a lot lately. It was lucrative but boring." "Then give me your wages," Joshua said. "Tisk, isn't it free?" the young man muttered, unwilling to give thousands of dollars to Superman. He continued working. The street was blocked off, making it impossible to go any further, but Joshua didn't want to take a detour, so he grabbed his skateboard and took off. Chapter 39, Destroyed Streets. I'm so tired. These superheroes are such a jerk. They only know how to fight criminals, but in the end, we're the ones left to clean up the mess. That's not fair, the bespectacled young man angrily said, throwing his tools aside. Why are superheroes so popular, while those cleaning up the mess are ignored? The young man was furious. Then a slightly older man said, "Because this is our job. We get paid, and they don't. We should be grateful for the destruction caused by the superheroes, because it's how we make more money. My children now have good food to eat and warm clothes to wear. Ha ha ha, if I'm happy, I'll give some food to the homeless. And don't you realize that when the superheroes show up in time, there are almost no casualties? So, kids, stop complaining and get back to work." A skinny woman wiped her sweat and said, "Superheroes have helped create jobs for us, and the salaries are pretty good." Ha ha ha, that's right. If it weren't for superheroes and supercriminals destroying the city, we'd probably all be starving, another black young man said. The young man with the glasses was speechless. He didn't know how to refute these words for a moment, but after thinking it over, he realized that it was indeed true. This job paid well. If he had to rely on his own abilities to find a job with a similar salary, he felt he didn't have the ability. It was indeed the superheroes who created the job opportunities for them. He couldn't help but lick his dry, prickly lips. He simply envied the superhero's aura. He unscrewed the bottle cap and took a swig. He said, "Can I be a superhero?" The slightly older man looked at the young man with the glasses and said, "Superhero? Isn't there a Superman app now? You can gain powers by charging a little money. But to gain the power to break through walls, it would probably cost around $10,000. I don't have that kind of money," the young man with the glasses said. He didn't want to pay for the Superman app. Just then, a rather portly man emerged from the corner and said, "Why can I follow you?" The young man with the glasses yelped, because this portly man was the one who had fought Spider Team earlier. The others were more composed. The slightly older man among them said, "Of course, you're crazy. He's a super criminal," the bespectacled young man exclaimed. "Isn't this guy afraid of attracting the police?" Then the slightly older man said, "You can call me Chris. Welcome to Superman Construction." Superman Construction was, of course, the company founded by Superman. "My name is Charles," the portly man said. He wouldn't have thought of robbing anyone if he hadn't been desperate. "I know you're someone with a story, but joining this company means you're just a worker. If you want to cause trouble, our boss, Superman, will come talk to you," said Chris. He used to be a demon hunter, but now he's just a worker. "Superman? Is our boss Superman?" the bespectacled young man couldn't help but exclaim. He had thought Superman at Superman Construction was just a symbol, but he hadn't expected it to be Superman's company. Chris said to the portly man, "Or Charles, after this job, I'll take you to see the other side of the world." Afternoon. "Boss, the guy who fought Spider Team has joined our company. What should we do now?" a man's voice said. Does he have a criminal record?" Joshua asked, holding his phone. "No, he's Mexican. His father is a drug addict, his mother is also an addict. He's been abused since childhood. He's only 18 this year, and he probably couldn't stay home anymore, so he left." Joshua rubbed his head and said, "As long as he works honestly, that's fine." He hung up. By noon, the streets, which had been damaged, had returned to normal traffic, and everything looked brand new. Joshua was walking when it began to rain. He stopped in front of a bar with his skateboard. He leaned against the window, waiting for the rain to stop. He could easily dispel the clouds and clear up the weather, but he didn't want to. Sometimes it was better to just let things take their course. He actually liked the rain, and more people started to gather around him. A thin mist began to drift lower down. Some people were strolling in the rain, looking very carefree. The rain gradually stopped. Joshua put down his skateboard and started to head home. As he got home, he saw Peter and his friends, all wet, apparently from the rain. Penny, Gwen, and Peter all returned to their room to change. May touched Joshua's hair and said, "It's a little damp, it'll be dry in a minute." Joshua touched it, and it was indeed damp. May insisted on using a hairdryer to dry Joshua's hair. Touching the fluffy hair, Joshua sighed. He wouldn't be sick at all. Gwen came out a moment later and said, "Can you help me?" "Yes." Joshua was speechless. Gwen asked him to help blow dry her hair, and Gwen squinted her eyes, looking very pleased. Gwen's short hair dried quickly, and she politely said, "Thank you." She even put $1 in Joshua's hand as payment. Otherwise, Joshua wouldn't have helped. As soon as Gwen moved away, Penny jumped over. She sat in front of Joshua, gave him $1, and said, "I want the same service." Joshua looked at Penny's cute expression and agreed. Hey, when the wind blew, Penny couldn't help laughing. Soon Penny's hair was dry. She touched her fluffy and still warm hair and said, "Joshua's service is really good." After Penny finished speaking, she went to find the game console and said, "Come on." Joshua stood up, handed the hairdryer to Peter and said, "Come on." The two sat together to play. Gwen took a look and ran to the kitchen to help Aunt May cook. "Hey, Joshua, I won this time." After a long time, Penny raised the game controller and announced, "Peter, it's your turn." Joshua gave his seat to Peter. This was a rotation. Whoever lost would take over. Peter sat next to Penny and said, "I'm going to be serious this time." Penny said, "Yeah." The game ended quickly. Peter was still beaten. He was a little frustrated and took turns with Joshua. Chapter 40 Succubus. A speakeasy. The bar's decor looked shabby, a bit like something out of the Middle Ages, with no modern feel at all. Inside, a few people were sipping drinks, and in the center of the stage was a succubus. She had 2 pairs of curved horns and a lifelike tail, but below her thighs were hooves from some creature, not human feet. A monster dancing passionately in the center of the stage was a truly astonishing sight, but the people who came here weren't too surprised, as if they were already accustomed to it. Chris, wearing a hat, sat at a corner of the table, observing the succubus on the stage with great interest. They were both losers in this world. The succubus was a loser in hell, and he was a loser among witchers. Originally, they were incompatible, but now, for survival and needs, they depended on each other. Chris touched his chest. He had encountered a demon decades earlier, and since then, he had become a loser, a witcher trapped in the body of a succubus. Soon, a succubus approached Chris and declared, "She's about to awaken." The succubus described her as the child of the witcher Chris and the succubus, who had awakened at 16. Because of their bloodline, she could vaguely sense the girl's stirrings. The succubus licked her lips and continued, "Hell is very interested in a human with succubus blood. Once she awakens, the demons will drag her into hell." Chris remained silent. The succubus continued, "Are you willing to watch your daughter become a toy of demons?" After a long pause, Chris said, "This is a superhuman world." The succubus smiled slightly, pointed upward, and said, "You mean the child who flies around all day?" The succubus knew Joshua. After all, everyone had mentioned him. From people's descriptions, she could imagine Joshua, a human with considerable power, though still far behind the powerful beings of hell. Chris nodded. The succubus turned and left without saying anything. "Do succubi really exist?" Peter asked, holding up a comic book. "They should, right?" He wasn't entirely sure, but he felt a certain anticipation. "They should." "Didn't Joshua mention encountering a demon before?" Gwen said, chewing on an apple. Penny was sprawled on one end of the sofa, her feet propped up on the back. She was also flipping through a comic. Today was a long-awaited Saturday, so she could relax. At the other end of the sofa sat Joshua and Gwen. Of course succubi did exist. Joshua had read a lot about demons in the New York temple, including succubi. These demons were weak in combat, often bullied and oppressed by other demons. If someone helped them, wouldn't they attract a surge of faith? It seemed possible, but they had to find one first. They also had to upgrade the Superman app. Joshua stood up and said, "I need to leave for a while." With that, he left the house and flew directly to Stark Tower. Tony and Banner were out conducting experiments today, so Joshua was left to design them himself. Similarly, Zero also needed an upgrade. Because of the super brain, Joshua completed the app upgrade in a short while. This app will be powered by the power of faith in Joshua's hands. This app is like a system that empowers those who believe in Joshua's existence. Joshua had just finished upgrading the Superman app when he received a call. "Boss Chris wants to see you. He has something urgent. Tell me the location." The location is. After hanging up the phone, Joshua looked at Jarvis and said, "Bye, Mr. Jarvis, Mr. Joshua and Miss Zero, goodbye." Joshua flew to a farm with large fields of crops according to the address. He quickly found Chris, who was accompanied by a boy, a girl, and a little girl. The little girl was Chris's child with a succubus, while the boy and girl were Chris's brother and his wife. "What's the matter?" Joshua said. Chris smiled bitterly and told the story. Joshua's eyes fell on the little girl. This girl with freckles on her face was actually a combination of a succubus and a human. The girl seemed a little scared and looked a bit like a simple deer. Joshua took a look and then set his eyes on Chris. He said, "We can make a deal." Joshua's mouth corners rose slightly. Chris felt a little scared, but still said, "What deal?" "Help me spread faith in hell." Joshua said it. He didn't expect that he would be approached by someone related to hell just after upgrading the Superman app. Spread faith? Chris's mouth was bitter. He was just a second-rate demon hunter. How could he have the strength to spread faith in hell? He looked at Joshua and said, "I'm just a loser." Joshua said, "Don't worry, she will help you." As soon as he finished speaking, Zero appeared, holding a seed. This was the upgraded version of the Superman app, capable of integrating directly into the mind. It was a fusion of magic and technology. With this upgraded app, the more faith a user placed in Joshua, the greater the power would be. "This is it," Chris said, puzzled. "Once you accept it, you will gain immense power," Joshua said. Chris reached out and took the seed. The seed instantly merged into Chris's body. Chris felt a faint surge of power entering him. Joshua then spoke, "This is the upgraded Superman app. It will grant you power based on the depth of your faith. There are 5 levels of faith. Level 1 grants you strength beyond that of an average person. Level 2 allows you to withstand bullets. Level 3 grants you the ability to fly. Level 4 grants you strength comparable to the Hulk. And Level 5 grants you the power of a god. Your faith is still weak, so the power you can gain is limited. However, because you are spreading faith in hell, you are special. With Zero's permission, you can wield even greater power of faith." Chris nodded and said, "I will." "Goodbye then." Back home, Joshua took out the PIM particles he had created and went to the quantum realm. He remembered that there were also intelligent creatures in the quantum realm, and he wanted to expand his faith. Joshua's body began to shrink. Chapter 41 Kang the Conqueror. The quantum realm is a strange world, a magical miniature universe. Although Joshua knew there were intelligent beings here, he hadn't expected such advanced technology. Spaceships, laser cannons, and so on were plentiful. Voices began to reach Joshua's ears. They were strange, like some language, but clearly not human speech. His super brain needed to analyze and process the information, but Joshua soon understood them. "Who are you?" A woman, with strange markings on her body, asked Joshua. Surrounding her were various creatures, all pointing weapons at him. "Drink the enlightenment juice," a strange pink creature said. Joshua shook his head and then said, "I can understand your voices. By the way, my name is Superman, or perhaps the god of the world. I know you are oppressed by a being called the Conqueror. He is devouring you bit by bit. Soon, you will lose your territory, your families, and even your lives." Joshua's words made the intelligent beings before him serious. "But don't worry. With this, you'll gain strength, a power that can save you," Joshua declared, like a charlatan. With a wave of his hand, a milky white seed flew into the bodies of every intelligent being here. "Faith can make you strong, but it requires some time to rest. They're coming." Suddenly an intelligent being spoke, announcing the arrival of Kang the Conqueror's army. Panic set in. Joshua spoke, "Leave it to me, but I can only help you once. The hope of faith is in your hands." His voice was soft, but everyone could hear it clearly. Everyone turned to look at him. Seeing everyone's gaze, Joshua knew the time had come to demonstrate his strength and convince them. In the distance, a dense swarm of warships and spaceships approached. Joshua opened his mouth and blew gently, instantly freezing everything. The warships and spaceships were frozen, and the cold was overwhelming. Joshua's figure seemed to dissipate. He spoke, "Hope is in your hands. Protect your families." Joshua vanished. The seeds of faith had been planted, all that was left was waiting for them to take root and sprout. But now, he had to go somewhere, Conqueror Kang's base. When Joshua found Conqueror Kang's base, he saw him sitting in a strange spaceship, watching him. Conqueror Kang, somewhat surprised, said, "You're here, which means you possess PIM particles. Let's work together." Joshua shook his head and said, "I know what you're thinking. You want to escape and seek revenge on your parallel self." Conqueror Kang had destroyed numerous universes and was an unmitigated demon. Naturally, he wouldn't let this demon escape. However, he wanted to study Conqueror Kang's spaceship, which could travel through parallel universes, making it a valuable asset. "Do you want it?" Conqueror Kang said, slowly approaching Joshua. Joshua nodded. Suddenly, Conqueror Kang attacked Joshua. His suit possessed immense power, so he felt confident he could kill Joshua. And no one had ever dared to act so arrogantly in his presence. Joshua casually grabbed Kang the Conqueror's hand and slammed it into the ground, instantly creating a crater. Kang's bones were broken. Joshua stepped over him. He then began studying the spaceship. Kang, slowly recovering from the healing effects of his suit, lay in the crater, watching Joshua. "Kill me, I refuse. A well-placed villain can accelerate the growth of the power of faith. You still have some value." Joshua had completely disassembled the spaceship and thoroughly studied it. With some satisfaction, he said, "Nice design. I'll explore other parallel universes later." Joshua didn't destroy the spaceship. He reassembled it and said, "Goodbye, Kang the Conqueror." "Who are you?" Kang the Conqueror asked. He had never encountered anyone like Joshua in other universes. "I'm just a passing superhero." Joshua flew away. "Joshua, it's time for dinner," Gwen said, opening the door and looking at Joshua. Joshua seemed to be holding something. "Yes." Joshua put the PIM particles away and said, "Eat, eat, eat." Gwen could sense Joshua's cheerfulness, so she couldn't help but ask, "Did anything good happen today?" "Everything good happened today." The two left the room. By the time they went downstairs, everyone else was already seated. There were quite a few people, 2 adult Spider-Men, 3 minor Spider-Men, May, and Joshua. So many people, they could eat quite a bit. "Joshua, this is mine," Peter said cheerfully. But the next moment, Gwen gave her portion to Joshua and said, "Here, I'll give it to you." "I'm on a diet, Peter." After dinner, Joshua said, "I'll do the dishes later." May seemed a little tired lately. May nodded, feeling like she needed a break. She'd been feeling a bit tired lately. After dinner, Gwen was about to offer to help, but the next moment, the dishes were cleared away. He washed the dishes quickly. Joshua put his apron aside, looked at Gwen, and said, "What did you want to say?" "No, nothing." Gwen shook her head. "It was really fast." Joshua said, "I need to go out for a bit." He had indeed gone to Stark Tower again, but this time, it was clear that Banner and Tony were there. Whoa, why are you here again?" Tony said irritably. This guy was tinkering with something new and not taking him with him. That was a bit much. Joshua then said, "Zero, upload the data I've collected." Soon, data on Kang the Conqueror's ship appeared nearby. Tony couldn't help but take a look and said, "There's something I don't understand. This ship involves a lot of knowledge I'm not aware of." "That's right. This is a ship that can travel through parallel universes. I'm also researching it," Joshua said. "Actually, you already know the principles, right?" Tony suddenly said, his eyelids drooping. Joshua must have come here to showing off something he understood while he couldn't. What a bad taste. Ha, you're overthinking it," Joshua said, clearly amused. Banner scratched his head and said, "It seems like there's still a lot to learn. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels." Chapter 42, Mecha and Spaceship. Banner and Tony watched Joshua endlessly designing the blueprints. While they could understand some of it, they couldn't grasp much more. Tony soon frowned and asked, "Aren't you designing a spaceship? Why is there a mecha form?" "Because a spaceship that transforms into a mecha is super cool," Joshua said. "Wouldn't it be super cool if it gradually transformed into a mecha while flying?" Banner, looking at Tony and then at the blueprints, said, "I think it's very cool. I loved toys like that when I was a kid," Joshua said. Banner, you know what you're talking about. With Zero's help and the computing power of Joshua's super brain, The spaceship design was quickly completed. Joshua then used the vibranium he had purchased from Wakanda to build the spaceship. By the time he finished, it was already midnight. It's finally done. Joshua smiled with satisfaction as he looked at the gray-black spaceship before him. It looked so sleek and handsome. Transforms, he said happily. Crack, 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 the black spaceship began to transforming from a spaceship into a mecha capable of carrying passengers. After the mecha stabilized, its chest opened, revealing the control cabin. Joshua flew into the cabin and instantly connected with a mecha. It felt like moving his own limbs, smooth, without any stiffness or awkwardness. He moved the mecha's limbs. Spaceship mode, Joshua said again. As soon as he finished speaking, metal particles appeared beneath his feet, quickly forming a seat large enough for Joshua to sit. The cockpit of the spaceship gradually emerged. Is it done? Tony yawned, watching the massive mecha transform into a spaceship. He'd been so sleepy earlier that he'd taken a nap, but Joshua had already completed the spaceship. Crack, crack, the cabin opened, and Joshua jumped out. He then used PIM particles to shrink the spaceship down to the size of a thumb. Joshua opened his hand, and the spaceship flew into his grasp, which he then tucked into his pocket. He turned to look at Tony and said, "Well, it's done. I have to go." Tony's eyes suddenly brightened, and he said, "You want to go to other universes?" Honestly, he wanted to go, but Joshua clearly didn't want to take him with him. Not yet, Joshua said, turning and leaving. He planned to wait until the faith in hell and the quantum realm had developed for a while before going to other universes. Then he could spread faith. There were so many parallel universes. If he spread faith to all of them, he would surely gain an immense power of faith. And collecting faith from parallel universes would also require upgrading the app. Going home and sleeping first. Early in the morning. Joshua, wake up, time to score points. These were the voices of Gwen and Penny. Joshua opened his eyes, rubbed them, and said, "It's only 8 o'clock, still early. Why don't you get a little sleep on this rare day off? We're going out for a barbecue today," Gwen said, looking very happy. Penny bounced and said, "Barbecue, Joshua, it's going to be fun." "Oh," Joshua said, his spirits were muted. "Hurry up and get up," Gwen said before leaving with Penny. Yeah, Joshua got up, dressed, and went downstairs to wash up. Peter was preparing his fishing gear, apparently wanting to go fishing. "Joshua," May said, hugging him. "Hurry up and get ready, we should go." "Yeah," Joshua nodded. After he finished washing up, everyone else got in the car. "Let's go, Joshua," Gwen said with a cheerful wave. Coming, the barbecue place was in the suburbs, quite far away. It was already 10 o'clock when they arrived. They quickly set up the grill and brought out the various ingredients. Although it was a remote place, there were still other people barbecuing there. A few minutes later, a girl ran up to Joshua and asked nervously, "Are you Superman?" The girl had a few freckles on her face, and with some grooming, she must be a beautiful girl. "Can we take a picture?" the girl continued. She didn't even give Joshua a chance to speak before she put the money in his hand. Joshua, he'd originally planned to give it away for free, but since he'd already given it, there was no reason not to accept it. He put the money away and took a photo with the girl. The girl smiled brightly and made a scissors sign, and Joshua did the same. The girl happily left with a photo. Gwen pierced a meat slice with her fork and blew on it with her lips. Peter watched Gwen silently. Just when he thought she was going to eat the meat slice, Gwen placed a blown cool meat slice in front of Joshua and said, "Here you go." "Thank you." Joshua instinctively ate it. Gwen took a slice herself and said, "The meat slice tastes really good." Peter suddenly felt the rich, delicious meat in his mouth lose its flavor and become dry. Hoo, this is delicious." Penny took the plate and bit into the meat slice, turning it around. It was too hot, but the taste was also wonderful. Hoo. After swallowing the meat slice, she took a drink of water. Ton. May smiled from the side, the atmosphere lively and joyful. She tasted the grilled meat and it was indeed delicious. Just as Joshua was eating, a little boy approached, about 3 or 4 years old. He looked chubby and full of energy. "Can you help me?" The boy pointed to the sky, a balloon soaring higher and higher, a coin in his chubby hand. A group of people were cheering him on nearby. Joshua took the coin from the boy's chubby hand and said, "Sir, please wait a moment." Joshua slowly ascended, then suddenly accelerated, grabbing the balloon string in the blink of an eye. From his perch, which was quite high, many people could see him. "Superman, I'm so jealous." Joshua landed, handed the balloon to the boy, and said, "Here you go." The boy took the balloon and stumbled back to his parents. Joshua picked up his plate. Gwen said, "What a lovely child." After a hearty meal, everyone looked around. Peter took his fishing rod and went fishing. He said he would catch something for dinner tonight. Chapter 43, Leave 3. There's only one chapter today. I will make up for it tomorrow. Sorry. Chapter 44, The Power of Faith. Chris leaned against a massive tree, the tallest in the area. A long knife rested between his legs. It was a weapon he'd used to hunt demons, but he'd only used it once, and he'd thought he'd never have to use it again. Unexpectedly, he'd need it again. Wisps of smoke drifted from the cigarette between his fingers. His gaze rested calmly on the girl. She was bending over to gather chopped firewood. She deserved a simple, happy life, not be haunted by demons. "Once this is over, can you send her to school in the city? She needs some close friends," Chris suddenly said. When no one responded, he pressed his cigarette against the trunk of the tree. After studying it out, he rested his head on his hands, gazing at the darkening sky. His mouth was dry as he spoke. "Miss Zero." Of course, Zero's figure appeared. Anyone with the Superman app could appear nearby. Chris looked at the lifelike girl before him. She was so lifelike. God knows how Superman was created. Zero was beautiful, with fair skin, large eyes, and a perfectly proportioned figure. If she were real, Chris could guarantee she'd be a heartthrob. Zero then spoke, energy fluctuations detected. "Prepare for battle, believer Chris." Zero began to channel his power of faith. Suddenly, a white light shone from Chris's body. He couldn't help but look. Was this the power of faith? He could feel a surge of energy flowing into him. Zero said, "Level 4, the power Chris had gained was that of a level 4 believer, a power comparable to the Hulk's, more than enough to deal with these hellish minions." A white bodysuit and cape appeared on Chris, a stark contrast to Joshua's black. Chris was surprised. "Is this a transformation?" "This is a suit that combines magic and faith," Zero said. Suddenly, the girl screamed. Her curving horns sprouted from her head, and a black tail extended from her pants. Her eyes turned pink, but the rest of her body remained unchanged. Chris grasped the long sword, and the power of faith enveloped it, igniting a milky white flame. He strode forward. A seemingly pure crimson door appeared out of nowhere and slowly opened. "I smell a human." A humanoid creature emerged, its skin covered in crimson, its fangs protruding, and its nose long. Chris swung his long sword. The demon sensed danger, but before it could react, the sword severed its body. The flames of faith consumed it, surprising Chris. Such a demon must have been quite powerful, yet he had killed it with a single blow. If he possessed such strength after borrowing Superman's powers, how much stronger could Superman be without him? Chris couldn't imagine it, but now all he had to do was kill these demons. Demons continued to appear, and Chris slew them tirelessly. The battle raged all night, and Chris finally rested in the morning. He lost count of how many times he swung his sword, and he never considered retreating, because if he did, no one would be able to protect his daughter. "Is it over?" Joshua rubbed his eyes. He knew about Chris's demon slaying the previous night, but he hadn't expected it to last all night. "It's over," Zero said. Joshua glanced at the screen, which showed Chris's daughter helping him to bed. Closing the screen, Joshua said, "Time to go to class." Zero's figure slowly faded. "Morning, Joshua," Gwen said. "Morning, Gwen." Penny was still curled up in bed, having stayed up late. "Penny, get up," Gwen reminded her, and they left the room. "Morning, Joshua," Gwen. Peter said as he ate. He was up pretty early today. "Morning, Peter," Gwen said with a smile. Peter's teeth flashed. Joshua yawned as he walked to the bathroom. As he entered, Gwen squeezed in and said, "Make way." Joshua moved aside a little. They both began to brush their teeth. Gwen mumbled, "Peter didn't catch any big fish yesterday." Peter hadn't had much luck yesterday. He only caught small fish, no big ones at all. Joshua said. As they brushed, Gwen playfully nudged Joshua. Joshua pushed back. A few minutes later, Penny came down and said, "Can I wash up?" They finally stopped. May had prepared breakfast again. Gwen savored it and said, "Aunt May's cooking is amazing." May smiled, a token of her approval. Joshua remarked, "It's delicious." Peter, who had already finished his breakfast, checked his phone and said, "Nothing serious seems to have happened." "That's good," Gwen said. Sometimes she wished there were fewer problems. Peter continued to watch. A few minutes later, Penny emerged, ate a small bite, and said, "Let's go. We should go to school." They said goodbye to Aunt May and left the house. Penny was still the first to jump. She said as she jumped, "Hopefully there'll be less crime today." "I hope so," Gwen said. After a short rest, Chris regained his spirits. He looked at the girl dozing in the chair and couldn't help but move her to the bed so she could sleep more comfortably. Her expression relaxed a little. Chris couldn't help but pull a cigarette from his shirt and walked out of the room, biting the butt. He took out a match and struck it twice before it lit. He used the match to light the cigarette, then flicked the flame out with his hand, threw it to the ground, and finally stepped on it with his leather shoe. "Ha!" He laughed, a hearty laugh. The demon haunted him like a nightmare, but after last night's battle, he realized that the demon was actually very weak. It was nothing compared to the power given to him by Superman. After laughing for a while, he said, "Miss Zero, can you place Anna next to Joshua? She's special, so if she's going to be friends with anyone, the equally special Joshua is the only one." Zero's figure appeared, and she said, "Enrollment will be completed soon." Chris smiled. Next, he had to go to hell to help Joshua spread his faith. "I had originally planned to write this chapter tomorrow, but I felt like I had nothing else to do, so I wrote this chapter instead." Chapter 45 Electric Man. Penny had just staggered out of the block, backpack on her back, when she heard the sirens of police cars nearby. It was clear another crime had occurred. "Joshua, I'll leave this to you." Gwen stepped forward and thrust her books into Joshua's arms. She immediately smiled sweetly and said, "Thank you very much." Then, Gwen ran off, her fluffy hair bouncing. "Goodbye, Joshua," Peter said, running over. Penny did the same. Soon, the spider team had all left. Joshua put his backpack down, then stuffed Gwen's books in it. He zipped it up, shouldered it, and continued down the street. "Wow, Superman, aren't you flying today?" A primary school student noticed Joshua and said, knowing that he could fly. If he could, he would only leave the house when classes were in session, so he could get more sleep. "Do you want to fly?" Joshua asked, looking at the student in front of him. "Fly?" The student's eyes lit up. Of course he wanted to fly, but then he sighed and said, "I don't have any extra money, otherwise I would definitely let you fly." Joshua walked with the student for a distance. As they parted, the student said, "Bye, Superman." "Bye, sir," Joshua said. A few minutes later, a 5-year-old girl in a floral dress approached Joshua and said, "Can you help me, Mr. Superman?" Joshua looked at the girl and said, "Of course, beautiful lady, how can I help you?" The girl pointed to an injured cat lying under a tree not far away. The cat looked nearly dead. "Please save it," she said. "I can't lose it." "I love it," Joshua nodded. He quickly walked over to the cat and took a look. The cat had no strength to move, and he had no tools, so he chose to use magic to heal it. He placed his hands over the orange cat, and tiny dots of light appeared and fell, rapidly healing the cat's wounds. The healing was swift, and the cat quickly recovered. Seeing the orange cat's recovery, the little girl couldn't help but hug it, then happily said, "Thank you, Superman. This is your reward." Joshua readily accepted the money, which was all the money the little girl had. He was about to leave, but the little girl looked at Joshua and said, "Thank you, Mr. Superman." "Cat, you should thank Mr. Superman too." "Meow meow," the orange cat meowed. Joshua waved his hand and said, "You paid, no thanks needed." "Hey." The little girl hugged the orange cat and rubbed it. Meanwhile, a few kilometers away, "Wow, Spider-Woman, are you okay?" Penny said, catching Gwen, who had been blown away by the explosion. "Wow, thank you." Gwen steadied herself, standing in the mech's palm, looking down at the person below. It was a person gleaming with lightning, a truly formidable figure. He had even attempted to control Penny's mech, but thanks to Joshua's magical program, he failed. Peter suddenly kicked Electro, who quickly regained his balance in midair. Then, raising his hand, he unleashed a powerful electric current, instantly sending Peter flying. "That hurts." Peter's body slammed against the wall, then slid down. He touched his chest and said, "Brother, how can you be so cool?" "Cool?" Electro stared at Peter intently. He had a normal life, but now it was all gone. Cool. I'm so cool. Electro rushed towards Peter fiercely. Throw me out, Spider-Woman shouted. Penny didn't hesitate, piloting her mech and throwing Spider-Woman out. Spider-Woman delivered a powerful mid-air kick, sending Electro flying, nearly scattering him. Electro rolled several times on the ground before coming to rest. When he stood up to continue fighting, he found his strength had diminished. Looks like they need to recharge, or they won't have the strength to continue fighting. Electro snorted coldly and vanished in a flash of electricity. Peter and the others quickly left the scene. Good morning, Joshua, said long-haired Gwen, tucking her hair into a bun. Good morning, Gwen, Joshua said as he sat down at his desk and put his bag away. Gwen then said, Joshua, give me a hand. Joshua tied Gwen's hair up with a headband. How is it going? After tying it, Gwen's eyes fell on Joshua's face. It looks good, Joshua said. They chatted for a while before short-haired Gwen, Penny, and Peter walked in. Short-haired Gwen walked over to Joshua and said, I'll get the book. She looked at long-haired Gwen and said, Hi, long-haired Gwen, hi, short-haired Gwen, then they both burst into laughter. Joshua held out short-haired Gwen's book. Gwen with short hair took the book and said, Thank you. After the short-haired Gwen left, the long-haired Gwen reached out and pinched Joshua's cheek. Joshua naturally reached out and pinched Gwen's cheek. It was smooth and felt good. Peter read while watching Gwen interact with Joshua. Gwen was so cute today. Class was about to start. The first class was with a sexy female teacher. She looked very capable in a suit, but her protruding breasts were truly amazing. They were so huge. What was she wearing today? Pure white lace. The lace was very rich and delicate, and the overall look was absolutely perfect. Speaking of buttocks, not many could be more perfect than the sexy teachers. While Gwen's was nice, it was still developing. The sexy female teacher turned around and looked at everyone, holding the book. Her eyes swept from Joshua to her. He was looking at her. She pressed her hands on the table, feeling that this would support her limp body. The boy next to Peter said, Peter, isn't the teacher too perfect? Peter nodded. The sexy female teacher was indeed ridiculously sexy. Long-haired Gwen was listening attentively to the class. Because she planned to be a superhero at noon and in the afternoon, she wanted to make good use of the class time. When the get out of class was over, the sexy female teacher looked at Joshua with a book in her arms and said, Joshua, can you talk to me for a minute? Joshua nodded. She must have something to say. After all, the sexy female teacher seemed a little more anxious today than before. Chapter 46 Monster. The teacher's office. Anne Hathaway, the sexy female teacher's name, sat in a chair, her expression somewhat anxious as she spoke. I don't know what's going on lately. I keep having nightmares, strange and terrifying nightmares. I guarantee it's unusual. The feeling was extremely uncomfortable, and Hathaway couldn't help but rub her head. She looked at Joshua expectantly, hoping he could help her. After hearing Hathaway's words, Joshua increased his perception a bit and then looked at Hathaway. There was indeed something special about her, wisps of black smoke. He had seen this in the Ancient One's magic book. It was a curse, but a very weak one. It caused nightmares and made it difficult to sleep. To activate this curse, a medium must be placed in the victim's home, and the teacher's home was likely home to one as well. Joshua explained the curse. Hathaway was stunned for a moment, then said with some distress, A lot of people send me things. I don't know what they are. I'm afraid I'll have to trouble you this afternoon. But why would someone curse me? I'm just a teacher, I don't know, but I'll help you. For a fee, of course. Joshua quickly agreed with Hathaway to visit her home that afternoon. Joshua then left the teacher's office. Entering the classroom, he saw Penny playing with her mech, now shrunk by pin particles and looking about 5 or 6 centimeters tall. Penny waved at Joshua and said, What did the teacher say to you? The teacher asked me to help her this afternoon, Joshua said. He also had a spaceship shrunk by pin particles in his clothes, which could also transform into a mech. Short-haired Gwen looked at Joshua and said, Do you need our help? It's just a small problem, Joshua said. He didn't need Spider-Woman's help. Sitting down at her seat, long-haired Gwen asked the same question. It's a small matter, Joshua said. Suddenly, his phone rang. I need your help. The message came from Natasha. Joshua told the long-haired Gwen beside him, Please ask for leave from class later. I need to be away for a while, Gwen nodded. Joshua looked at the address and then jumped out the window. Damn it, Natasha threw the bomb under the 3-meter-tall monster. Bang! A huge burst of fire erupted, but the monster was only forced back a few steps. Natasha had come to investigate a serial murder case, but she hadn't expected the mastermind to be a monster. The monster had many faces, all severed from it, utterly perverted. Natasha had topped up her Superman app, but she still couldn't defeat it, so she had to flee. It wasn't worth it to keep adding money, so she called Joshua. I'll make you a part of me, the monster roared fiercely, clearly delighted. He loved the way Natasha ran. Seeing Natasha stopped running, he spoke, I'm a worthless piece of shit, someone who even prostitutes look down on. Ha ha ha, no one cares if we live or die. But thankfully, I've discovered an ancient black magic that allows me to trade human lives for power, perfect power, do you see? My unparalleled power. If I kill enough people, I'll become a god, replacing Superman. Superman is just a brat. If I were him, I'd rule the world and make everyone submit to me. A Superman bound by the guise of kindness is a waste of his power. Natasha smiled and said, someone's behind you. The monster turned and saw Joshua. Superman. The monster tried to run, knowing Superman's strength. But the ground suddenly heaved, transforming into a giant hand that grabbed the monster. The monster roared. So noisy, Joshua glanced at the monster, and it felt like it had lost the ability to speak. It shook its head in fear. Natasha walked up to Joshua and said, this world is truly magical. It feels like everything exists. Joshua nodded and said, this world is truly magical. Natasha handed the money to Joshua and plopped down on the ground, exhausted. From his vantage point, Joshua could see Natasha, the white flesh beneath her leather jacket. Natasha watched Joshua from the corner of her eye, seeing him looking at her breasts, and couldn't help but say, pay me and I'll let you touch it. Joshua, seeing Joshua remain silent, Natasha laughed and said, no matter how special you are, you're just a little brat. Then Joshua placed his hand on Natasha's, and it felt quite good. After a few minutes, Natasha pulled her jacket back up and said, can't you be a little gentler? It hurts a little. It hurts a little from being pinched, and this guy actually did it. The next second, Joshua was giving Natasha a hard time. Natasha felt something was amiss about that number. She had a feeling Joshua had ulterior motives. She'd investigate later. Joshua said, goodbye. Moments after he left, a group arrived and took the monster away. Nick approached, saying, this monster is truly dangerous. As he finished, he noticed Natasha's expression, a mixture of resentment and triumph, like a neighbor's older sister who had tricked an innocent boy. Natasha, Nick couldn't help but ask. You tell me. Natasha came to her senses. She had sensed Joshua's excitement earlier. Little guy. It was noon. Joshua was with his sexy teacher, Hathaway, who was eating bread and reading a magazine. Joshua's hand seemed to be grasping something in the air. Hathaway's eyes kept glancing at his hand. If he tried to grab her plump breasts, she could only accept it silently. Hathaway's heart was pounding, and the pace was getting faster and faster. Suddenly, Joshua looked at Hathaway and said, teacher, your heart rate has increased. Huh? Really? Bye, teacher. Joshua stood up and left. He had touched Gwen's vagina before, when they kissed at Gwen's house, not too big, not too small, just right. Had she really reached puberty? She was actually thinking about this. Joshua dismissed the distracting thoughts. It was time to go home for dinner. Chapter 47 Sexy Female Teacher. In the afternoon, Joshua walked with Hathaway, a slender, thong-wearing teacher. Wearing high heels, Hathaway was noticeably taller than Joshua. Hathaway was a truly stunning beauty, even more stunning than even celebrities. Just walking alongside her was enough to turn heads. Many people greeted Hathaway along the way, and Joshua as well. While Hathaway's beauty was unforgettable, Joshua, possessing godlike powers, was clearly more famous. Arriving at the parking lot, Hathaway drove her car. The silver gray car was clearly a luxury vehicle, and Joshua couldn't help but glance at Hathaway. This car wasn't something that ordinary people could afford. Could this thong-wearing teacher be wealthy? Hathaway opened the door and said, let's go. Joshua climbed in. The seat felt comfortable, and the air was filled with a faint fragrance. This car was a gift from my dad, Hathaway said as she drove. Hathaway drove very smoothly, a reassuring feeling at least. She kept a peripheral eye on Joshua. Yet, Joshua looked out the window, seeing many people taking out their phones to take photos. Hathaway observed Joshua out of the corner of her eye, obsessing over his every move. She felt like a girl with a crush in high school, constantly watching his every move. The car gradually approached a residential complex, and Hathaway quickly pulled in. The sexy teacher was a wealthy woman, incredibly wealthy, to an extreme degree. After Hathaway parked the car in the garage, she opened the door and said, "Let's go." Joshua got out, took in the enormous garage, and once again sighed that the wealthy woman was right there with him. Following the wealthy woman into her room, Joshua began to examine her belongings. It didn't take long for him to discover the source of the curse, a luxury watch. When Joshua found the watch, it still emanated the power of a curse, a dark, twisted force slowly emanating. Hathaway stared at the watch with a look of surprise, as if in disbelief. She looked at Joshua earnestly and asked, "Is it really this?" Joshua nodded confidently, saying, "Why would I lie to you?" Hathaway smiled wryly and said, "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have doubted you, but this watch..." Hathaway then explained the origins of the watch. It was a gift from her ex-boyfriend. Joshua sat in a chair, listening to Hathaway's story. Hathaway and her ex-boyfriend had been college classmates and dated for a while, but soon broke up. After she finished her story, Hathaway suddenly said, "It's been a while since anyone came home. Can you have dinner with me?" Joshua, dinner? He preferred Aunt May's cooking, so he was about to refuse. Just as he was about to say no, Hathaway lowered her head and said, "Please have dinner with me. It's been a while since anyone's been with me. I can pay." Hathaway felt lonely. Joshua had no choice but to have dinner with Hathaway. Regarding his ex-boyfriend's situation, Joshua called the police, believing they would take care of it. Hathaway's lips curled up slightly when she saw Joshua leave. Life seemed to have a little more fun, at least not as boring as before. Joshua returned home quickly. As soon as he got home, he saw Aunt May watching TV, while the others were probably doing something heroic. Joshua sat down next to Aunt May. May said, "You're back." "Yeah, it's just a little thing." Joshua watched the show, finding it boring. Around 10 o'clock, May stood up and said, "I'll go get some snacks. They should be back soon." Joshua said, "Let me do it. I'm fast." May smiled and stopped Joshua. She said, "I have to do something." Joshua, "Okay, call me if you need anything," Joshua said. May nodded and left. Joshua began playing games. A few minutes later, May came out with some snacks and fruit. She placed the fruit on the table and asked, "Want some fruit?" "Wait until the game's over," Joshua said. Half an hour later, Gwen and the others arrived. The room instantly became noisy. The two adult Spider-Men chatted with each other. Peter, upon seeing Joshua, began to recount his thrilling day. Joshua didn't want to listen, so he ignored her. Aunt May invited them to eat some fruit. "I'm going to wash my hands," Penny said, heading to the bathroom. She quickly washed her hands and then went to the living room. She chose a large piece of watermelon. She sat next to Joshua, watching the screen, and ate the watermelon. Penny felt that this life was great. She could help others, and Aunt May would have fruit and snacks ready when she returned. She also had a formidable gaming rival like Joshua. She loved her life now. Penny quickly finished the watermelon, then spat the seeds into the trash can with precision. Then she rubbed her hand on her skirt, feeling it was no longer sticky, and held out her white hand, saying, "Give it to me, Joshua. Go have some fruit." Joshua handed the game controller to Penny and said solemnly, "Be careful." "No problem," Penny said happily, nibbling her pink tongue with her mouth, looking playful. "Here you go." Gwen handed Joshua a piece of watermelon and sat down next to him, practically squeezing him. But neither of them noticed. Peter sat next to Aunt May, watching the game screen. He was also quite interested in the game. The two adult Spider-Men began to chat with Aunt May, telling her about their day's events. Aunt May listened patiently, showing no sign of impatience. "Yes," Penny clenched her fist and said, "See, Joshua, I win." Satisfied, Penny put down the game controller and said, "Who wants to play next?" Joshua and Peter said in unison, "Me." Peter said, "You played before Joshua, so let me go first." Joshua didn't want Peter to play first, so he suggested playing rock paper scissors to decide who would go first. Peter didn't object, but then he said, "Joshua, you can't cheat." Joshua's eyelids drooped. Who did Peter think he was? Gwen said, "Begin." Peter played paper, Joshua played scissors. Peter pouted. He lost. He had only been talking before. Joshua wouldn't cheat on such a thing. Chapter 48 Little Succubus. A girl with glasses, pigtails, braces, and a few freckles stood awkwardly in the classroom, her hands clutching the hem of her clothes, clearly nervous. Anna Chris was the girl's name, and she was also the half-blood succubus Joshua had helped before. Honestly, he found Anna a bit rustic. But even so, her subtle succubus-like allure took hold, making people find her increasingly beautiful and captivating the more they looked at her. Anna pursed her lips, her gaze set on Joshua. Her father had told her to stay with him. "My name is Anna Chris," she said. Her introduction was brief, but those affected by her power couldn't help but want to be close to her. For example, a handsome blonde man said, "Anna, you look perfect." He honestly wanted to lick on his feet. So many people approached her, and Anna was intimidated. She looked at Joshua, somewhat bewildered, waiting for him to help her. Her eyes were so eager that everyone noticed Joshua was at the end of Anna's sight, and suspicions swirled. But gradually, the crowd quieted down, and Anna, like a naive deer straying into the city, approached Joshua. She lowered her head and said, "Hello, Joshua." The two Gwens in the classroom frowned, wondering why this seemingly unassuming girl had such a special connection with Joshua. "Hello, Anna," Joshua said. Anna sat at the back of the table. She was quite tall, perhaps because of her succubus bloodline. Even without high heels, she was as tall as Joshua, which was considered tall for a girl. The arrival of Anna, the little succubus, stirred excitement among both sexes. After Anna settled in, Peter spoke. "Why do I find Anna so charming? Her outfit isn't anything fancy at all. I think she's charming, too," the chubby boy said, looking back at Anna, his liking growing. Gwen, with long hair, looked at Joshua and said, "Anna is so charming. She's captivated everyone the moment she arrived. What do you think of her?" She's got great skin. With a little makeup and a bit of prettiness, she'd be a rare beauty," Joshua said truthfully. Gwen, with long hair, carefully studied Joshua's tone, and after determining there was no unusual emotion, she said, "Indeed." As soon as class was over, Anna was surrounded. The students chattered, and Anna, frightened, looked at Joshua with a pleading look. Joshua, however, wasn't prepared to help. This situation would soon subside. "Ooh. Joshua," Anna said, running over to him. "What's up?" Joshua asked. "Thank you for your help earlier," Anna said. Without Joshua, who knows if she'd still be alive. "It's a deal," Joshua said. Chris helped him spread his faith in hell, and he helped Anna. It was a fair trade. Joshua pulled his skateboard from his locker and said, "You should go make some friends." Seeing Joshua leave, Anna felt uneasy and grabbed hold of his shirt, as if grasping at a lifeline. Joshua turned around. Anna quickly let go, then said, "I've got some gifts. Can I give them to your family?" "Whatever," Joshua said. Anna went to get the gifts and then went home with Joshua. Neither of them spoke much. Anna was afraid to talk, honestly. She just wanted to stay close to Joshua. When she met May, Anna was visibly nervous and even bitter-tongued. May greeted Anna with great warmth. Anna gradually relaxed under May's gentle hospitality. But what surprised Joshua most was Anna's outrageous appetite, even more than his own. She finished 3 portions before blushing and putting down her utensils. Her food, while edible, was absurdly lackluster, while Joshua's was incredibly delicious. While May cleared the dishes, Joshua handed Anna the juice and said, "Is it your succubus blood that makes you such a big eater?" Anna nodded sheepishly. Her physique was stronger than average, and her appetite was quite large. They sat for a while. Joshua then stood up and said, "We have to go to school." Anna stood up and said goodbye to May after they left the house. Anna said, "I'll pay." Joshua glanced at Anna and said, "No thanks." They began to talk a little more. Oh, I see Joshua." Up high in the building, Penny crouched on the edge, watching Joshua and Anna together. The two Gwens also squeezed over. Short-haired Gwen asked, "Is there something fishy going on between them?" Long-haired Gwen stroked her chin and said, "Joshua must have helped Anna." Peter said sourly, "Anna is not a good match for Joshua." The others watched curiously as Joshua and Anna walked towards the school. "I'm going to grab someone," long-haired Gwen declared. As she finished speaking, a pitch-black substance enveloped her, and the symbiote suit was attached. Long-haired Gwen leaped down. Joshua suddenly looked up as he walked, and the next moment, Super Spider-Woman landed, the symbiote suit perfectly contoured to her form. Wow, I might need someone close to you. Gwen grabbed Joshua's hand and launched a web of silk to carry him away. Gwen landed on the glass in the middle of the building. Joshua had been captured by her, and their eyes met. Joshua said, "So what are you going to do?" The symbiote on Gwen's head separated, revealing Gwen's beautiful face. She said, "Nothing, I just wanted to do this." The symbiote suit made Gwen's personality a little tougher. Gwen approached Joshua, and it seemed that she wanted to kiss him. Suddenly Joshua said, "Someone is coming." What? Gwen was a little confused, but the next second she saw Anna flapping her flesh wings and flying here. "Gwen, Anna, are you the Super Spider-Woman? You can fly." If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 49: Hathaway's Anguish. At the edge of the building's roof, Gwen, both long-haired and short-haired, in their symbiote suits, gazed curiously at Anna. Anna had already retracted her flesh wings. She disliked them because they made her look too monstrous. She didn't want to be like a monster, she just wanted to be normal. Peter crouched silently nearby, watching Anna. Penny, crouched atop the towering neck, curiously observed Anna. Joshua introduced Peter and the others to Anna. The superheroes were actually her classmates, a surprising discovery. Anna eyed them curiously, thinking they were special too, perhaps becoming her close friends. After a moment's pause, she spoke, "This is astonishing. You're all superheroes, then." Anna explained her flesh wings. The Spider Squad members were surprised to learn that Anna was a half-succubus, but they also understood why they found her so attractive. Peter looked at Anna and said, "Anna, do you want to be a member of Spider Team? You can fly and possess superhuman strength. I believe you'll be a superhero." "Yes, Anna, join us," said Gwen, with short hair. Penny looked at Anna with wide eyes. A flying half-succubus, truly amazing, like something out of a cartoon. Joshua sat on the edge of a tall building, looking down. Whether Anna wanted to join Spider Team was none of his business. Joshua saw a little girl eating ice cream. She looked clumsy, perhaps because of her young age. She bent down to pick up a ball, and the ice cream ball rolled to the ground. She froze, as if she had stopped thinking. Anna looked at Joshua and said, "Are you also a member of Spider Team?" "No." Joshua stood up and took a step forward, seeming to stand on air. "Class is about to start," Joshua said. "We have to go." Penny patted the tall mech, and it quickly shrank, controlled by Penny's spider. The mecha jumped into Penny's hood. "Wait for me." Penny ran and pounced on Joshua. Joshua reached out and grabbed Penny, then took Penny away. Gwen reached out her hand and seemed to want to go with Joshua, but Joshua had already left. Long-haired Gwen curled her lips and said, "Let's go, class will start soon." Even though Joshua didn't fly at full speed, he flew to the school quickly. He put Penny down as soon as he landed. The two sat in the classroom for a while before Peter and the others arrived at the school. Long-haired Gwen walked over to Joshua, sat down, and said, "Anna is willing to join us, but she hasn't found a place to live nearby yet, so you want her to live in your house?" "I think that's okay," Joshua said. Long-haired Gwen sighed and said, "I don't have any extra rooms at home," but short-haired Gwen said she'd like to live with her, "so Anna's going to your place. From now on, your place will be our Spider Team headquarters." Joshua, he felt his house was already a bit crowded, and adding Anna to the mix would only make it even noisier. Seeing Joshua remain silent, long-haired Gwen's eyes caught Hathaway. Today, Hathaway was still dressed in formal attire, with impeccably crafted makeup. Her vibrant red lips looked especially alluring. She was as alluring as a sultry woman. What was Hathaway wearing today? Joshua wondered. Oh, black lace today. Hathaway's class wasn't boring, at least Joshua felt like he could stay a little longer. After class, Hathaway's eyes fell on Joshua and she said, "Joshua, I need your help." "Yes," Joshua nodded. Following Hathaway into the office, Hathaway looked at Joshua and said, "I felt like I had trouble sleeping last night. Is something still affecting me?" Joshua began to examine her. After a while, he said, "There's still a little bit of the curse in my body. It will dissipate in a few days." "It might be affecting you." Hathaway smiled wryly and said, Can you help me expel the remaining curse? Joshua nodded and said, let me give you a massage. When he examined Hathaway earlier, he had noticed some stiffness, obviously from sitting for too long. Hathaway coughed and said, I need to take care of some things first. I'll have you massage me later, you pick the time. Joshua hadn't expected Hathaway to be so focused on work. A sexy, beautiful, wealthy, and hard-working woman is very attractive. Because Hathaway had to work, Joshua left first. Hathaway bit her nails. She should dress sexy today. She felt restless. For a 26-year-old virgin, Joshua was undoubtedly an extremely tempting feast. Work first, work first, work first. Hathaway tightened her legs and began to work. Would he dislike her? Hathaway's mood suddenly darkened. Joshua was surrounded by so many beautiful women, and she was just a teacher. Hathaway could be quite timid at times. If she had been a little bolder, she might have been a mother long ago. She was truly lonely, she longed to experience the world of sex. Hathaway worked with a resentful air. A long time later, Hathaway left the office, bag in hand, when a handsome man suddenly said, Madam, would you like to have dinner with me? Hathaway glanced at the handsome man. Dinner? Then, would we go to the hotel? The man before her was indeed handsome, but Joshua, with his radiant black hair and dark eyes, was even more captivating. Hathaway was a dreamer, but it was just a fantasy. I'm sorry, I have a date today, Hathaway said. Today she had to shed her virginity, a status that had long been teased by her friends. Well, next time, the handsome man said, very gentlemanly. Hathaway turned and left, driving her luxury car and quickly heading home. She got home and tidied her room. And Joshua's photo, she had to put it away, or else she'd be considered a pervert. She spent a long time tidying up before nodding in satisfaction. She was sweating, so she decided to take a shower. I want to shed my virginity, Hathaway hummed a strange little tune. Chapter 50 Hathaway's distress continues. As Hathaway joyfully awaited Joshua's arrival, she even boasted about it to her friends. Her besties offered their well wishes. Soon after, someone arrived, a young man and a middle-aged man. The young man was Hathaway's younger brother, and the middle-aged man was her father. Hathaway was bewildered. Why were they here today? Today was the day she'd lost her virginity. Hathaway was devastated, but if she could just get them out of the way quickly, she could get on with Joshua. She pondered how to trick her father and brother into leaving. There was still time, still time. Hathaway hurriedly stood up, but as soon as she opened the door, Joshua descended from the sky. It was over. Everything was over. Hathaway was devastated. There was no chance today. She looked at the three men, tears welling in her eyes. The young man looked at Joshua, who had descended from the sky, and said, Hello, Superman. Hello, Joshua said. The middle-aged man looked at Joshua and couldn't help but say, Mr. Superman, why are you here? For a massage. Hathaway then told him about the curse. Both the middle-aged man and the young man were furious. How dare someone hurt Hathaway? They were truly reckless. Joshua then gave the sexy female teacher a massage. He also massaged the other two. When he left, Joshua received a large sum of money for the massage, a full $1 million. He was truly wealthy. Seeing Joshua leave, the young man flexed his shoulders and said, Superman's massage was amazing. I feel so relaxed and comfortable all over. The middle-aged man nodded in agreement. Only Hathaway looked glum. Her lips pursed, looking a little aggrieved. This was clearly an unprecedented opportunity. She wiped her eyes. The sadness was uncontrollable. After a moment, her gaze hardened. She stood up, looked at the young man, and said, Rubio, it's been a while since we've practiced, right? The young man's face changed. His sister was a fiercely muscular woman. He'd been beaten up many times before. Her fighting skills were top-notch. Sparring with her was pure torture. He hurriedly said, We're here to invite you to the party, so maybe you can find the right guy. Hathaway looked at the young man. If they hadn't come, she might already be in bed with Joshua. Is there any man in this world more perfect than Joshua? Seeing Hathaway's determined gaze, the young man sighed and said, Okay, be gentle. The two walked to the boxing area. Under the bright moon, Joshua looked down at the brightly lit streets below. The cold moonlight cast on Joshua. The wind rustled the corners of his clothes. He once thought the world was vast and solid, but now it felt fragile and small. It felt like the slightest force could destroy it. Are you admiring your world? Tony flew to Joshua's side in his iron armor. He thought Joshua was admiring the world, just like a ruler would admire his territory and city in the dead of night. Without looking at Tony, Joshua said, "This world is small. Wow, are you showing off your speed?" Tony couldn't help but exclaim. Joshua's gaze fell on Tony and he said, "What brings you here today?" Jarvis said someone was floating under the moon, so I came here to relax. By the way, when are you planning on going to other universes? Tony asked. He knew Joshua already had a spaceship that could travel across the universe, so he was curious about when he would go. Saturday and Sunday, I have time, Joshua said. He had originally planned to wait for his faith to develop before leaving, but now he suddenly felt that this world seemed a bit boring, so he decided to spend Saturday and weekend exploring other worlds. He didn't know what he would encounter. Tony looked at Joshua and said, "I know you're powerful, but things are different in other universes. Be careful not to get captured and sliced up by people from other universes." Joshua nodded and said, "I know." Tony then talked to Joshua about PIM particles. Joshua had previously provided very detailed information, so he understood most of it, but he still had some questions. He then shared these questions, and Joshua didn't hold back, telling Tony everything he wanted to know. Finally, Tony said, contentedly, "I'm leaving. Jarvis will transfer the money to you later." "Okay," Joshua nodded. Seeing Tony leave, Joshua returned home. Several well-dressed women in luxury cars arrived at Hathaway's house. They were happy for Hathaway's feat. Finally, this guy had finally experienced the beauty of love between men and women. They even prepared a cake. But what greeted them was Hathaway's ridiculous expression, a mixture of grievance, anger, and sadness. Her friends were stunned. "Hathaway, have you met a scumbag? Who do you think it is? I'll kill him." Several girls chatted at once. Hathaway was suddenly touched. She had a group of good friends. Then she told them about her frustrations. "Do you have any thoughts about Superman? He's so powerful. If he just hits you, wouldn't you be dead?" said a short-haired woman. Hathaway said, "Joshua can control his power perfectly. When he doesn't use his power, he's just like an ordinary person, so this kind of situation won't happen at this time." A long-haired beauty said, "Is Superman's thing big?" Hathaway's pretty face flushed, and she stammered, "I haven't seen it yet." After that, their remarks became more and more bold. After a long time, a short-haired woman spoke up. "At the previous party, you almost beat a man to pulp. To be honest, I thought you had no interest in men." Hathaway immediately said, "He is too frivolous. He says some irritating words as soon as he opens his mouth." The long-haired beauty lifted Hathaway's chin and said, "Hathaway, actually, I can accept women." Hathaway quickly jumped away and said, "I am the one who wants to take down Superman, but Superman is your student, right? You little bitch, damn sultry girl, get out, you can't shake my determination. The harder it is to get something, the more I want it," Hathaway said. She felt like she was a little crazy. End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.